Bless you. All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for, oh, can I get the audio up in there just a bit? If that's okay? Thanks. Perfect. She was just waiting. Hi, Jessica. Good morning. First of all, I would like to do an acknowledgement that we are here on the Anishinaabe Algonquin territory. The people of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation have lived on this territory for millennia. Their culture and presence is nurtured and continues to be nurtured on this land. At this point, we do have regrets from Councillor Johnson, but I will turn it over to the committee coordinator for roll call today, please.
Councillor Bradley.
Here.
Councillor DeRoche.
Here.
Councillor Devine.
Here.
Councillor Dudas.
Here.
Councillor Gower.
Here.
Councillor Johnson. Councillor Lowe.
Here.
Councillor Lulov.
Here.
Councillor Skowski.
Here.
Councillor Troster.
Here.
Vice Chair Kitts.
Here.
Chair Tierney.
Here.
You have quorum, Chair.
Great, thank you. So at this point, I'm just going to go through the agenda. Let's see here. We have no declarations of interest. We have confirmation of minutes 23 from September 27th, 2025. Is this item carried? Great, thank you. We have a response to inquiries. We do have 9 delegations to speak on this today. I'm going to just lift it, if that's okay with committee, to add to the agenda. Thank you. So that will be added. We'll take that and put that. We're going to do a little rejigging because we do have a couple of things that I think that might clear anyway, but if we do require it, we do have people from the MTO here as well today, so we'd like to put that up front. So I'll go to, when it comes to the Highway 417 Rapid Bridge Replacement at Woodruff and Maitland Avenue, we do have some slides on that. Do people want to have a presentation discussion on that? I think that's very important, so that would be good. Teresa's in? Good. So we'll hold that. You guys will be first on deck. Item number 6, Planning and Building Services Department. Yep. Canada North Transitway Environmental Assessment Study. We have no delegations to speak on this one. I think we've been well presented on this one. It's EA. Does anyone see the need to put this item on the agenda for discussion? Seeing none, is that item carried? Great, thank you. Item number 6.2, private approach. Again, I think we've been beaten to death on this one. We do have a presentation if you feel necessary. There is no delegations on this one. I think it's a good news story. That being said, does anyone want to hold this item for further discussion?
Yes. Yes, Chair.
Councillor DeRoche, that's been held. Thank you. So item number 7, of course, we have status update, Public Works and Infrastructure Committee. And then we have no in-camera items, so we'll go back up to the... and is the status report received? Sorry, next page. Received? Thank you very much, everybody. So we'll go back to the first item on the agenda. As mentioned, we'll get the bridge replacement to go first. It's just simply a matter of course because we brought them in, and now we have 9 delegations that weren't originally on the agenda have been added after. So we'll get MTO to come forward. We'll load up the slide deck and we'll do some introductions. Thank you. All right, gentlemen, just looking here. Great. If you want to introduce yourself, I believe we have Lincoln McDonald and Bruce Monroe. Got the right people here today. Perfect. Says it in your name tags. Please give us your presentation today. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Ben Monroe, a lead engineer with MTO Projects Delivery Office.
Lincoln McDonald, I'm the project manager for the consultants on this job for Stantec. Do you want to do it? Okay, all right. So we'll start. So as the presentation shows, it's the Highway 417 rapid bridge replacements, particularly Woodruff and Maitland Avenues. This is the first of two contracts. Second contract will follow this one. It's for Richmond and Pinecrest replacements. Just an overview, as I said, the project limits are basically from Maitland Avenue to the 416. The red circles are contract 1, the blue are contract 2. Next slide. In general, it's the rapid replacements for the Woodruff Avenue and Maitland Avenue underpasses, including active transportation facilities on the structures. Reconstruction and a profile adjustment at Woodruff and Maitland Avenue to meet current highway bridge design code requirements. New retaining walls at Woodruff Avenue and an extension of the existing ones at Maitland. 3 overhead sign relocations, 1 on the eastbound lanes, 2 on the westbound lanes. Highway resurfacing, 417. This is why the extension is up to 416, the Highway 416, because it's throughout that corridor. And then some snow barrier installation on the Clyde Avenue underpass. Next slide, please. Scope of work basically is establishing this fence construction staging area. They're located both within the interchanges. Construct the new decks and an integral pier. It's an innovative solution within the staging areas. Widening of the abutments and construction of the superstructure. Demolition of the existing bridge decks, including weekend closures. Reinstatement of decks using the rapid replacement technology. Again, weekend closures. Profile adjustments, approach reconstruction, and restoration of the impacted areas. So in general, Maitland Avenue and Woodruff Avenue are raising by about 750 millimeters on profile to meet the required standard. Maitland Avenue is being widened by 10 meters approximately, 3.25 to the east, 6.75 to the west. That's to accommodate the active transportation facility. As well, Woodruff Avenue has got a 6.5 widening, all of it to the east, and that again is to accommodate the active transportation facilities. Next slide, please. This is just a cross section showing Woodruff Avenue. You can see the 2-meter sidewalk, 2-meter cycle lane. There is a 0.3 delineator strip between the two of them that is taken off of that, so approximately 1.85 for both. There's a buffer to the roadway, 0.9, a 0.5 meter shoulder, 3.5 meter lanes throughout. Woodruff has a median cap. And then on the next slide is Maitland, pretty well the same cross section. It's just no median cap in that one just because of the turn lane requirements. Next slide, please. So this is the staging area for Woodruff. It's in the northwest inner loop. As you can see, it's circled in red. Next slide. So at Woodruff, for the slide says 24 hours. We're actually now looking at 24 to 48. We're trying to see if we can do some additional highway work within the closure period to try to help save time on the end. Woodruff Avenue is to be closed for approximately 6 to 7 weeks. That is for the abutment and superstructure construction as well as the profile adjustments. And then we have a 48 to 72 hour full closure of the 417 again for the bringing the new bridge in place and finishing off the abutments. As noted, we're hoping to use ramp surfing at Woodruff for that closure because the off ramp from the eastbound and the westbound, they line up pretty good, so we can take them off the eastbound ramp and put them back on westbound around the interchange. Ramp closures with regards to Woodruff Avenue do include the Woodruff Avenue east to south, northeast, and southwest ramps. Those are long durations, but as I noted, the south to west, we're hoping to use as ramp surfing. Pinecrest southeast, Pinecrest northeast, and the Maitland north southwest ramps are also impacted during those closure periods. Next slide, please. So this basically just shows the detouring routes for Highway 417 during the closures. We are utilizing baseline and carling, similar approach that's been done on previous RBRs within the corridor. I won't get into the details. It's hard to read it anyway, but that's basically how it's done. And like I said, where ramps surf around the Woodruff Avenue closure. Next slide, please. Again, during the ramp replacements, other closure requirements for the in-place work. Too small to really get into, so if you have questions, I can answer them, but I'll proceed to the next slide, please. This is the active transportation and pedestrian detours. We have met with the city on staff on this, as well as we've had 3 MTAC meetings to discuss this. What routes are available, what's possible. I will note that yesterday we received an email from staff asking us to look at a couple of different other options that is still currently under review. Next slide, please. Maitland Avenue, again, the staging area is in the northwest quadrant of the inner loop. Next slide, please. Again, we're looking at a 24 to 48-hour closure to try to maximize what we can do when the highway's closed. Maitland Avenue is going to be closed for a little bit longer period of 7 to 8 weeks because the widening is greater. 48 to 72-hour closure again for the actual bridge replacement. Ramp closures here include Woodruff South to East, Woodruff Northeast, Maitland West to North, which is a long duration closure, Carling East to West, Maitland East to North South. The Maitland East to North South ramp actually is a double ramp. We are closing one of the lanes on that ramp for the duration of the construction, but during the actual replacements and the demolition, it'll be fully closed. And then the Maitland West to North South ramp. Next slide, please. Again, we're utilizing Baseline and Carling as our detour route for around the construction zones. Next slide. Similar aspect here with regards to the closure at Maitland. We are using LaPerriere and up and around. Next slide, please. I apologize for how small they are, but the detail is really difficult to read here. Pedestrian cycling detours, similar to the route for the closure. It's around LaPerriere and around the construction site. Next slide, please. Traffic and incident management coordination. We have met with the traffic incident management group, reviewed the requirements of this project with them. There also be a requirement within the contract to have an incident management team in place. It'll include City of Ottawa staff, traffic center, MTO operations, emergency services, the contractor, and the heavy lift operator. Extensive coordination and continuous contact between the IMT team members will be key to the delivery of this project. There's also a requirement within the contract for a communications plan. So we'll be utilizing media, newspaper ads, radio, and use of social media to inform the public of the closures and detour routes. Traffic detours in effect during the route replacement of the weekends and side roads are all be communicated. Advanced notification and PVMS signs will be utilized to communicate that to the public. And there's also a requirement to do a dry run as far as the lift and the meeting and coordination meetings. Next slide, please. Project timelines. We're looking at a contract submission at the end of March, tender period April to June, award late June with construction and contractor on site sometime in July of 2026. The bridge replacements themselves and the demolition will happen in 2028. There's a lot of preparatory work in advance that has to be done with the abutment widenings, retaining walls, and whatnot. So the Maitland replacement is slated for late spring, early summer of 28. Woodruff would follow in the late summer of 2028. We are still looking at methods and efforts to try to expedite the schedule if possible. But that right now is our timeline. That's what's going to be reflected in the contract. Next slide, please. And that is our presentation. We are open to questions if anybody has any.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. One quick second. Okay. And forgive me, for those that are joining us today. I appreciate it. Councillor Brockington, Councillor Kavanaugh. We'll go to committee members first, if that's okay. So we have Councillor DeRoche first, then Councillor Kavanaugh, and then Councillor Brockington. Oh, Councillor Lowe, you're in there too. So I'll go start again. DeRoche, Lowe, Gower, Kavanaugh, Brockington. We'll get there.
Thank you, Chair. I want to thank the ministry officials for their participation today. I think it's always positive when we see very close collaboration between the City of Ottawa and our provincial partners when it comes to our 400 series. So I thank you for coming today, and I'm sure we'll be friendly to you. My questions are to staff, Chair. I'm not sure if our traffic staff are there to respond to questions.
They are.
Thank you. One thing I've observed and residents have observed from time to time is when there's construction or disruptions on some of our major arterials along the 417 series, that there are potentially congestion problems along the Hunt Club corridor as people substitute. And I think there's a feeling from time to time that there's a focus on the immediate ground zero, which is where this is happening. And obviously, we want you to be sensitive to the residents who live here. But there's other impacts at other intersections. And I sometimes wonder if you have the eyeballs on the ground zero, but also you have eyeballs on other intersections as well that may be seeing pressure as a result of the closure, because people are adjusting their patterns and frankly avoiding the area. So I wonder if traffic could just comment on this, that you're looking at the entire network when things like this happen, and you're making adjustments. And again, not just at ground zero, but in other potentially impacted routes that are used by commuters. Thank you.
Thank you through you, Chair. Yes, the city's traffic control center will actively monitor the network, the entire network, throughout the closures as well as the ongoing work. We maintain continuous contact with the Ottawa Police Service, Ontario Provincial Police, OC Transpo, and the contractor during the replacements themselves, so that we can ensure rapid response to any congestion, collisions, transit impacts, or unexpected behaviors during the replacements. That's for the entire network.
Okay, thank you. So if I was to describe this, that at our traffic monitoring headquarters, you would have a person, even if it's a weekend, or people looking at the cameras for ground zero, and you have people looking at the intersections in other parts of the city, in addition to the Hunt Club or Rideau and King Edward, which I think we're always keeping an eye on. There's some intersections that are, chronically problematic. You'll have the resources there to keep an eye on the other key intersections in the city, like Hunt Club corridor.
That's correct. Okay. We also have traffic management inspectors that are on call to be able to be deployed into the field to help with any situations that arise as well.
Okay. All right. I'll leave it there, Chair. Thank you very much for those answers.
Great. Next on the board, it's actually Councillor Gower. Sorry about that.
Okay, thanks, Chair. My question is about what planning and integration occurs with OC Transpo. Two things come to mind, just making sure OC Transpo has increased capacity to move more people by bus or train during these construction events, and also ensuring that OC Transpo is aware of dates so they don't schedule LRT maintenance on the same weekend or something that would take trains out of service. So yeah, so what kind of integration and involvement do you have with OC Transpo?
OC Transpo has been at the MTAC meetings. They're aware of the closure dates we're talking about. We will follow up again with them to confirm that they're aware of this, but they'll have to adjust their schedules based on those closure requirements. I will note that, given the duration of the project, it's 2.5 years. It's a little bit flowable and stuff can change a little bit as far as coordination. I know that with detour routes and stuff like that, as far as pedestrian cyclists, we tend to tweak them a little bit during the construction just to meet requirements. So as far as OC Transpo goes, there are bus stops impacted because the highway's gone, the roads are first gone for that period. So they have to find an alternate scheduling and routing for those areas.
Okay. And hopefully by the time you're doing these bridge replacements, we will have a functional train out to Moody and Algonquin, which will take the pressure off of, give people an option on the days when these highways are out of commission. So thanks, Chair.
Well said. Councillor Lowe.
Thanks, Chair. That was part of my question as well is that, you know, at that time, we we're anticipating that the western extension of the LRT could be open. Do you foresee any work that will, understanding that the north-south alignment under the 417 is quite close to Woodruff, do you foresee any requirement anytime during the project when there may be impacts to the tracks down below?
We don't anticipate any impact to LRT tracking.
Okay.
Right. There will be some coordination requirements with regards to construction zone overlaps.
Yep.
With regards to the highway paving operations, because we are paving up to the 416. So there's some coordination between MTO operations and LRT to find timelines for doing that. But that's the only impacts that we foresee in this contract.
Mm-hmm.
If things progress later than they're supposed to, contract 2 will definitely have to have coordination with LRT if it's still under construction.
Okay, no, understood. My second question is, you note that the rapid bridge replacements will happen in 2028. I think it's reasonable to assume that the multi-week closures of the two roads will sort of end with the bridge replacement.
Yes.
Right. And
there's about a week delay after the bridge is in place.
Yep.
For us just to clean up the approaches.
Yep.
And stuff like that. But yeah.
Okay. And then also fair to assume that the two closures will not happen at the same time.
They will not happen
Okay.
at the same time.
Good. Good. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And Councillor Kavanagh.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to MTO for the cooperation. People don't realize it, but the active transportation had to be brought in there, and it was through cooperation with the city that was able to do it for both projects. And I appreciate that. I worked very closely with Councillor Johnson, who's on the other side of the bridge, and myself, and I know our residents are going to benefit a great deal on both for pedestrians and for cyclists. So thank you for all that cooperation. I really appreciate it. I am aware, though, safety is an important issue for both pedestrians and cyclists, and one of the issues is off-ramps. And I'm just wondering what measures will be taken so it's safer for pedestrians and cyclists at these as they pass by the off-ramps.
So just so you're clear, right?
And on-ramps.
Our contract ends before we hit the actual ramp terminals. So we are providing AT services on the bridge only. It's not on the approaches to the bridges. That is a city requirement and a city responsibility.
Okay, but I know MTO is responsible for the ramps. So, okay.
So currently they'll stay the way they are right now, like if they're marked with a crosswalk, that crosswalk will remain.
Yeah, so we do need some precautions for that, but no, I appreciate it. It's already been mentioned about, coordination. I'm aware that the Carling Avenue rehabilitation for the bridge, which is just down by Lincoln Field, is going to be done in 2027. So if it gets delayed, that's another factor to look into. Hopefully all stage 2 will be done by then, because we've had major closures of Woodruff, as you're aware. So that's important. So appreciate it. But overall, I appreciate the work with Councillor Johnson and I and the city on getting this so that pedestrians and cyclists can cross over north-south. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you as well for the presentation today. A lot of investment by the ministry in the Ottawa area on the Queensway network, so it's good to see. How old are the bridges?
Late 50s.
Oh, both of them. Okay. The active transportation that you mentioned, I'll just reference Maitland first. There's no cycling network infrastructure that leads to the bridge, if I recall correctly. This is almost on the border between Councillor Johnson's ward and my own. So to city staff, my assumption is the bridge surface will have active transportation infrastructure built on it, but we will then connect that infrastructure to city streets at some point. Is that the plan?
Through the chair, yes, the city has a project to build in the neighborhood connectivity to those cycling facilities over the highway after the construction work on the highway is concluded.
So those have been prioritized. It's not like we're going to build it on the bridge and then wait many years before the city roads actually connect to that bridge infrastructure.
In the case of Maitland, we're looking at coming in very soon after the construction work is completed, and then Woodruff after that.
Okay, very, very well. My only other question to you is, and not your area, perhaps, of responsibilities, who do I contact to get information about the Bronson work, the Bronson off-ramp work? Do you have a ministry contact we can connect with after? I'm not going to ask those questions today because it's not germane to the agenda, but I just need a contact.
Yeah, you can send them to myself if you
Okay,
want. Yeah.
perfect. Thanks very much. And just to staff, when we've had bridge replacements in the vicinity of Carlington, Carlington becomes a parking lot. Because what happens is Carling is the default detour. Carling becomes gridlock. And what people do is they come into Carlington to go east-west to avoid the Carlington gridlock. So to hear that we will, quote, actively monitor the network, there's no one that we can reach out to on the weekends. The police are non-existent. There's no one at the city. And so what we're looking for in advance of these projects, particular Maitland is, and because I heard La Perriere mentioned, which is in River Ward, is to have a discussion on some temporary calming measures. We're not saying we don't want people through the neighborhood because you have to be realistic, but there's got to be a way to safely accommodate significantly higher volumes of traffic in a residential community. Some of my residents probably don't want this to begin with, but given that we have very limited options during a short period of time, we have to be reasonable, but there's got to be some safe ways to accommodate this. We're seeing significant volumes of traffic. It's a short period of time, but there needs to be a better discussion with the local councillors. To Councillor DeRocha's point, sometimes we just focus on the immediate area where that bridge work is happening, and we don't realize there are significant spillover effects. So I would like to speak with staff. We obviously have time, 2 years, but that is a key point that residents of Carlington have raised every single time there's a bridge replacement project. Finally, are these projects timed with the Carling Avenue bus lane project between Broadview and Bronson? Like, this project continuously has been delayed, and we keep hearing it's because we're waiting for other pieces to fall within the area. And also the repaving of Bronson between the Queensway and Canal. It is an absolute disaster right now, and I keep hearing staff want to wait for other key infrastructure projects, including 417 work, before other city major streets can be done. So the Carling bus lane project, Bronson resurfacing, are we waiting for the 417 project to be completed?
Through the chair, so that's certainly one of the considerations in terms of coordinating the work is making sure that we're not having construction or changes being implemented that impact those diversion routes. There's also coordination with the underground infrastructure works, and some of these surface works along Carling are sort of tied into the timing of those underground projects and how those get prioritized. So there's a number of different considerations, but that's certainly part of it.
So Chair, can I just get, I don't think I need a direction, but just maybe staff can issue a memo. We keep hearing about requests from the community and other stakeholders about the Carling Avenue bus lanes. They've literally been on the books for 10 years. We postponed them because we wanted the Trillium line to open first, and now we want the hospital built. This is probably one of the most low-hanging fruit projects that's cheap. It's not like a rapid bus corridor like a baseline. It's simply paint and some signage. So if staff could just reply, what are we waiting to happen before that project gets advanced? If they could just reply in writing, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yes, we're happy to do that. And just to clarify, there are different sections along Carling, and so some of those may be able to be advanced sooner than others, and we can clarify that as well in our response.
Great. Yeah, really good points, Councillor Brockington. I appreciate that. Councillor Leeper, we're still on this item. Did you have a question in regards to the bridge closures or anything? Okay, good. Great. So on that, I want to thank you folks for coming out today. I just have a quick question, obviously. It's too bad we didn't have a ring road. I won't get onto that again, don't worry. But we know that this does create a lot of problems in that corridor, the bleed out to the communities. So keeping people informed, our staff will do a terrific job on that. Like Councillor Gower says, we're really fingers crossed about LRT. I think that'd be very helpful. When it comes to, we saw an accident on the highway where it closed for even a few hours, and the pandemonium it created in the city, complete gridlock. We're hoping to avoid that at all costs. So whether it's communications, our colleagues, I just retweeted and things for Councillor Johnson. I encourage my colleagues to get out there and make that known to people, and we'll try to keep our transportation networks open as best we can, but it is a necessary evil. Otherwise, people will be looking for new cars, and we don't want that either. So thank you very much for coming out today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and committee members for letting us do this presentation.
Thanks, Frank. Good to see you. Okay, so I'm going to have a real quick look at the agenda. I did say we'd go to right turns on red, but I'm just looking. Councillor DeRoche, if you're online, do you have a brief questions, or is this something that could be kind of a much longer process for your questions about that? Just out of curiosity, just to see who should go first, just knowing that it could be a longer section for the right turns on red.
Yeah, Chair, sorry. This is for the private approaches bylaw. I guess
Yep.
I was of the view that there'd be a presentation and there'd be other colleagues that might be interested in that, perhaps not.
If you wish the presentation, Councillor, it's totally up to you.
Yeah, I would like that.
Okay, great. So you know what? We will
Thank
go.
you. Sure.
Okay, so we'll go, if it's okay with committee. I'm just looking, we have staff here, and if we could do the private approach thing first, I think it'll be brief. There is a presentation, and then we'll go directly to the right turns on red. No issues? Thank you. Okay, great. So we'll get that presentation pulled up, and if I can get staff to come up and give that presentation, please.
All right, thank you. My name is Jacqueline Quinn. I'm the bylaw review specialist leading the project, the review of the private approach bylaw. I'm joined today by Rob McLaughlin, program manager of the right of way branch, and Kevin Lamer, program manager of right of way inspections branch. Next slide, please. So to begin, I just want to take a moment to situate the report and the recommendations in the context of the city's right of way. The right of way, in essence, is the roadway and the land beside it up to the property lines on either side of the road. The size of the right of way And the configuration of the infrastructure within it can change in context depending on the location. However, despite where we're talking about in the city, it does serve core functions that are integral to achieving the city's priorities and to the services delivered to residents. So to highlight a few of those functions that are most related to the recommendations presented in the report and highlighted today, the right-of-way includes space for planting trees. It is a space where we store snow in the winter. There are opportunities for on-street parking. It serves to manage our stormwater through permeable surfaces and roadside ditches. There are sidewalks and active transportation infrastructure, and the right-of-way includes both above ground and below ground utilities and other infrastructure. Next slide, please. So the private approach bylaw, for its part, regulates the construction, use, and maintenance of private approaches, which are the portion of the driveway that are in the city's right-of-way. So the image on the screen here, the yellow line shows that boundary between the private property and the right-of-way. The parking spaces and the portion of the driveway on private property are the realm of the zoning bylaw, and that portion of the driveway, again, that's in the right-of-way, that's governed by the private approach bylaw. The image here shows private approaches in a residential context, but the bylaw itself does regulate vehicular access to parking lots, farm fields, and other land uses. The bylaw was enacted in 2003 as part of an exercise to harmonize the pre-amalgamation bylaws that govern the right-of-way. It was identified through the corporate bylaw review work plan that the private approach bylaw undergo a comprehensive review during this term of council to align with ongoing city initiatives, primarily the enactment of a new zoning bylaw. One of the foremost objectives of this review was to continue to preserve the functions of the right-of-way, and we worked with city staff across departments to ensure that the final recommendations considered these functions. There was continuous coordination to ensure that the private approach bylaw could be aligned with the new zoning bylaw as passed by council, as the language and the rules in the zoning bylaw have a direct impact on the functionality and the interpretation of the rules in the private approach bylaw. We did aim to modernize this bylaw and to provide a more responsive regulatory environment. And we looked to streamline business processes, find efficiencies, and improve the client experience. Next slide, please. So as detailed in the report, staff are recommending that the regulatory gap around walkways in the right-of-way be addressed by including pedestrian access within this bylaw. Under the proposed framework and to align with the approved provisions in the new zoning bylaw, staff are also recommending that there be a set of permissions for residential properties to install a walkway, such as on the image on the left there, or limited driveway expansion, as shown on the right, in the right-of-way. Staff do recognize that these installations can provide more flexibility for property owners to improve access to their home, to get in and out of vehicles, or to move around vehicles parked in a driveway. They are permitted on private property, and when allowed to continue past the property line to connect to the sidewalk or to the roadway, that can improve their functionality for residents. There is proposed criteria within the draft bylaw for these types of installations, which includes maximum widths, setbacks from trees and other infrastructure in the right-of-way, such as fire hydrants, and maintaining minimum amounts of green space within the right-of-way. For those installations that can meet this criteria, the impact to the functions of the right-of-way is considered to be low, and it's proposed that there be no requirement to apply to the city for a permit. Should the nature of the request fall outside the permissions provided for in the bylaw, a permit application would be required to initiate a technical review to evaluate if approval can be granted based on the site context and input from city services. Next slide, please. The recommendations presented today and those detailed within the report are timely for improving overall compliance. On March 1st, the new hardscape contractor license comes into effect for any contractor engaged in installing driveways and other hard landscaping features, including walkways. Just as the private approach bylaw aligned the regulations in the right-of-way with the parking and driveway rules in zoning bylaw 2008-250, These recommendations look to facilitate access to those configurations provided for in zoning bylaw 2026-50. The provisions for front yard parking in the new zoning bylaw and the framework for allowing walkways in the right-of-way will bring many properties into compliance, and it also clarifies expectations for property owners regarding their access. Ensuring that there is continued alignment with the new zoning bylaw will also provide for straightforward determination of compliance on both sides of the property line. The city will continue to respond to service requests and will require reinstatement of the right-of-way when installations are beyond the allowable limits. Next slide, please. To effect the changes presented and to provide clarity regarding walkways, the inclusion of walkways, the recommendations propose a full replacement of the private approach bylaw with the proposed access bylaw. Minor amendments to the other bylaws that govern the right-of-way will tie together this overall regulatory framework. Communication of the rules for driveways and walkways is tied in with the city's new landscaping education guide that will be published online next month. The guide is a component of the hardscape contractor license and will provide comprehensive information in plain language for residents and for contractors alike. We are also wanting to target education to the landscaping, real estate, and legal communities, as we've heard that there's a need to provide better information to those groups that are informing residents, either before a new project or a new home purchase. This concludes the presentation. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for that. Good news story. Councillor Drosh.
Yeah, Chair, I do think it's a good news story. I think this builds on the work we did with the regulation of landscapers. And as I said during that exercise, I've spoken to many homeowners who were unaware of sort of the limitations in terms of what they could do with their driveway, or frankly were misinformed by I'll say unscrupulous contractors and that. So that I think is a big part. I'm pleased to hear that there's going to be a major education effort, that there will be some plain language materials so that we can communicate. And I'm wondering if you could just expand on this. This will be very important certainly in my community, in the new suburban community. If you go into the frontier of the city, I know some of you maybe haven't been out to the frontier. I invite you to come out and check it out, but you'll see tons of advertising, right? Because people purchase their dream home, their dream stacked townhome or what have you, or their townhome, and they immediately start to put in the pieces to improve their home, whether that be fencing or a walkway such as this. So what will be your approach to really drilling into these communities and these residents who are going to be making some important decisions and important investments? And we want to make sure that they do it right so that they don't have a visit from bylaw services.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. Certainly the most timely piece of communication is that landscaping education guide, as I mentioned, which is going to be published online mid-month, next month. There is a public information campaign around that. Driveway rules, walkways, hard landscaping, that's a very heavy component of that. We may also look to expand on collaboration with the home builders and those packages that they're providing to new homeowners in terms of once they take over the keys and now they are in place, what are those rules, and directing them to the appropriate information. There will of course be very comprehensive web updates along with this. This is a new component, adding in the walkways, so making sure that there's very clear parameters around that and people are directed to the appropriate information.
Okay, good. I was going to suggest that because as my former colleague, Councillor Harder would say, when someone goes into a sales office and they're purchasing a home, they're focused on hardwood floors and paint and light fixtures and tiles and all these wonderful things that are going to make their home. And when they move in, they're dealing with, whatever some fixes, and then they start to get into, all right, I'm going to work on my backyard and what have you, a fence. I'm going to work on the access to my home and that. So I think it's important that especially for new home buyers, that you get in there. And I do recommend that you talk to the development community and see how you can get those materials as part of those packages, so that again, people go into this with eyes wide open. I have very little sympathy for people who take down their tree for parking. Can you just emphasize the importance of maintaining the tree, and I guess how this bylaw is going to make sure that they're not touching the trees that have been planted? I can go into parts of my ward where over the span of 10 to 12 years, they're beautiful streets. The trees have started to come in, and that's exactly what we want to see. It takes some time for all those trees to mature. But if 3-4 people start, bricking over their property and taking the tree out, that is not what is, that's not what we want to see in our community. So can you just speak to the emphasis that you'll put on ensuring that the trees are protected, and again, they're there for a reason, an important reason? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In terms of the as-of-right permissions that are being established for the installation of walkways, there are setbacks from existing trees, and that does take into account in working with forestry services, maintaining protections around the critical root zone, and really also tying into those provisions that are already established within the tree protection bylaw. So that is in there, and it is also, as we were talking about the communication plan, that is a heavy component within that landscaping education guide as well. And these hardscape contractors, through the new licensing that's coming into effect next week, must abide by the city's bylaws, the tree protection bylaw being one of many. And that education component is part of that.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to leave it there and just conclude by saying this is a big step forward. It's really surprising that this bylaw hasn't been updated since 2003. And I think we're certainly behind the times when we see kind of the development that's going on in the suburban communities, and what people are looking for to, again, beautify their home and improve the access to their home, and do so in a compliant way. Dovetails very nicely with the work we're doing with regulating landscapers. And again, I think it's a big step forward today. I think we need to see how this rolls out, and potentially there may need to be some adjustments going forward. Again, it's very surprising that we haven't really looked at this in a very, very long time, and I don't think we've really kept up with kind of what's happening in our communities across the city. I'll leave it there, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much, Councillor George. Good points. Councillor Lowe.
Thanks, Chair. Quick question. So last year, well, throughout this whole review period, there were a number of homes that received notices of violation for what are technically currently non-compliant walkways and extensions, and a lot of them had artificially extended, had artificially long correction timelines, I guess. So now that if it's likely this will be approved, and if that goes forward, how will that process look like to make sure that the people whose walkways are going to be compliant, they get their notices of violation, I don't know what's the word, nullified, let's say?
Thank you for the question, Councillor. Through you, Mr. Chair. For these situations, Councillor, where we've applied discretion, as we knew there would be changes coming to the zoning bylaw and the access bylaw, we will now revisit this should this be approved. And if these properties are now incompliant, those notices of violation would be rescinded.
Okay, thank you. And just for clarity, though, the properties that remain non-compliant will have to still correct it by the date that's on the notice of violation.
That is correct.
Or contact. Yep. Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Law. Most appreciated. Thank you very much for coming out today. Is that the report received? And it's carried. I'm told I got to carry this one. Thank you very much, guys. All right, on to the item that we've added to the agenda. It's right turns on red. So at this point, we're going to go directly to delegations. And the first on deck is William Van Geest. He's online, and William's no stranger to this place. I'll just make sure he's there. Oh, IRL, William's here. And we have slides on file, William, so we'll get this set up for you.
Thank you.
Great. You have 5 minutes. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. So Ecology Ottawa launched a petition last August after a shocking number of people were hit by drivers. We called for a ban on all vehicular turns on red downtown, right and left, as a pilot project, with data collected for an eventual more expansive ban. To date, over 800 people have signed this petition. We were looking for a simple, obvious, and effective measure. And we were grateful that Councillor Troster, we were thankful for her for bringing this important issue forward, even though we, and I suspect she, would have preferred implementation rather than another study. Of course, anyone who's walked or rolled downtown knows the dangers of cars turning on red. I've provided an illustration of this on my first slide. So the image on the left shows how when turning on red is allowed, drivers ignore the stop bar routinely and roll into the intersection, endangering people crossing. And you can see the person there being, barely missed. So the best case scenario there is that the driver blocks the crosswalk or the crossride, but just as easily they may hit someone in the crosswalk. Drivers here aren't looking for pedestrians, obviously because of the threat of oncoming cars. This is particularly true if the pedestrian comes from the right, as here, since the threatening oncoming cars are coming from the left. And you can see this in the next slide. So if the driver here had arrived a moment later, they could have hit the pedestrian. Could I get the next slide? Thanks. But blocking the crosswalk or crossride is also a problem, as it forces people into the very same oncoming cars that the driver seeks to avoid. And you can see this on the next slide, where a truck driver has forced someone using a wheelchair out of the crosswalk. I could show more photos, but of course time is short. In light of the very real and obvious danger that turning on right poses, it was surprising to read staff's report with its claim that right turn on red is somehow safer for people walking and rolling. Now, some of the reasoning there relied on two noteworthy factors. First, that drivers may not comply and indeed might get frustrated. New slide, please. And that there's, second one being that there's too much car traffic. So on driver non-compliance, the report states that delays often lead to aggressive driver behavior. It also warns, next slide, that, quote, drivers may choose to ignore right turn on red restrictions, and there may be more, quote, collisions, especially if drivers are distracted or behave aggressively. But it seems wrong-headed, I think you'll agree, to reward drivers' non-compliance. Parents know if you indulge a child's tantrum, you're just inviting more tantrums. This is not sound transportation policy. On too much traffic, this is an outcome of council's decisions made with staff's recommendation. For example, we reintroduced cars to Wellington Street when all the research said that this would increase car traffic downtown. Before that, we reduced bus service downtown with the LRT opening, so we are laying in the bed that we've made. But why should vulnerable road users pay the price of council's poor decisions? We also noted that staff's report didn't cite any of the research literature on this issue. If they had, they would have reached the opposite conclusion. So we thought we would share some of this literature, just covering several aspects of the issue. Next slide. One literature review found that where turns on red were permitted, quote, all right turning crashes increased by 23%, pedestrian crashes by about 60%, and bicyclist crashes by 100%. Next slide. Another paper observed, quote, significant increases in pedestrian and bicyclist collisions, specifically 40% for pedestrians and 82% for bicycles in New York State. And then there's several other states there that I'll leave you to read. Next slide. A large CAA study of near misses showed that, quote, 55% of pedestrians and 50% of cyclists had had a close call with a vehicle, and, quote, near misses most often involved vehicles making a right turn. Now, staff's report also questioned compliance. A study of banning right turns on red in San Francisco revealed a 92% driver compliance and a 5-to-1 reduction in close calls. And based on the pilot project, they recommended that not only maintaining a ban on turning on red, but expanding it. And so on. All of these sources have been on Ecology Auto's website since last August. So why did the report ignore it? In closing, this report must be rejected. It ignores the research literature. It recommends yielding to driver petulance and prioritizes the momentary convenience of drivers over the very safety and well-being of everybody else. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for that. I'm just looking on the board. Sorry, can you take the timer down? I can't see. There we go. Thank you. Councillor Troster.
Thank you so much for being here, William. I really appreciate it. And I will have questions to staff after about the discrepancy between the statistics cited in this report and the statistics in the CAA report, namely the lack of inclusion of near misses, which can be really frightening. Some of the original arguments made for allowing right turn on red cite reduced emissions. And because you work for Ecology Ottawa, I was wondering if you could just comment on that.
Yeah, thanks. I didn't have a chance to get to that. And of course, as an ecology organization, emissions are very important to us. And of course, we've seen in the last GHG inventory that transportation emissions are increasing and have become the highest source of emissions. So of course, that's very important. This was actually a rationale advanced when right turn red permissions were suggested back in the day in the 70s and 80s. So we've had decades to debunk this, and debunk them we have. As you can imagine, an idling car doesn't release a ton of emissions. So yes, there are more emissions if a driver has to wait at a light. There's no question about that, but it's minimal. And the research shows this quite amply. But then there's a contrary effect of increased emissions in the net, as you can imagine, because of induced demand, right? The principle that if you make it easier to drive, more people will drive, more cars on the road, more emissions. So again, in the aggregate, allowing turning on red increases emissions across the transportation network.
Thank you. And you referred to the CAA study, which speaks about near misses, whereas the staff report doesn't. Can you just say more about why we should be talking about near misses and not just fatal incidents or serious injuries?
Yeah. So that's right. The staff report has some statistics about the situation in Ottawa, but only major injuries and death. I think we'd all agree that a minor injury would also be somewhat traumatizing and undesirable. But another factor I think that's really significant with right turn on reds is when a pedestrian or someone walking or rolling is narrowly missed by a car, which happens all the time for the reason that I mentioned earlier in that diagram, that drivers are looking for other cars rather than for pedestrians. And so the net effect is a hostile environment for people walking and rolling downtown, as again, anyone who's walked downtown knows. And that data is not registered in the city data. And understandably, this is just a statistics gathering, a data gathering problem that near misses don't usually make it on the radar. They are nevertheless significant. Similarly, people who forego trips because, again, it's too dangerous, it's too hostile environment. So this data, I should say, is depressing. We can't have people with major injuries and death at all, but it also doesn't capture the total effect of permitting right turn on red.
Right. So you're suggesting if you have a number of near misses, that's gonna maybe convince you not to ride your bike or to walk. It might convince you to drive instead because, or if your kid is constantly scared they're going to get hit by a car, you might not let them walk to school.
Yeah, 100%. And then if that increases the reliance on cars, we are going the exact opposite of the very goals that we committed to in the official plan and the transportation master plan, right? Of converting to sustainable modes of transportation. All of a sudden it makes sense to hop in a car and participate in what amounts to a little bit of an arms race, right? If everyone needs to be in a car, that's just increasing congestion. So that's right. It's a bad environment that's created.
And just the last question. I mean, I don't think there's really demand for a ban on right turn on red citywide or in some of the less populated areas. The reason I submitted this inquiry is because we have such a hodgepodge in downtown Ottawa. Some intersections let you do it and some don't, so it's very inconsistent. I'm just wondering if there's any data on whether right turn on red could be safely prohibited in just one part of the city, like just in the urban core, if Ecology Ottawa has done any thought about that, or if you think it would create confusion citywide.
Yeah, it's a great question, because occasionally people will say, well, if we just ban right turn on red in this area, is that going to be confusing? And there was a pilot study done in San Francisco, for example, where they banned right turn on red on 100 intersections. They found compliance rates excellent. I think it was 92% in pedestrian situations. So we know this can be done. The result of that pilot project was a recommendation of maintaining those prohibitions on right turn on red and then extending to other parts of the city. And you can understand why this works because, once you are in a particular zone, say in this case, north of the 417, west of the canal, south obviously of the Ottawa River, you know that all intersections are, right turn on red is prohibited. So it just becomes a simple measure rather than, as you say, the kind of patchwork approach currently.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Brockington.
Thank you for your delegation. Why not just ban right turns on red where intersections actually have conflict? I'm thinking Western downtown is not as populated, doesn't have the same number of workers, tourists as closer to here, for example. You've mentioned the problem of perhaps motorists not from a particular neighborhood confused. Am I in the right geographic area where the ban is in place? If there's no signage, do I just assume it? I can't do that. And I ask that just because in River Ward, I think of McCarthy and Paulanka, where the community center is, Walkley and Springland, which is beside Holy Cross School. Every lit intersection by Mooney's Bay Park. What we've done is we haven't banned reds. We give a pedestrian advance light. I think this is the best innovation at a traffic light intersection because the pedestrian is the first person that gets to go. They are already midway through the intersection when that light turns green for the motorists, and that pedestrian is now very visible. If a pedestrian and motorist start at the same time, peripherally, I think for some motorists, they can't see the pedestrian. So I'm not opposed to right turn on reds. I just think they need to be warranted at intersections where the conflict to the vulnerable user is real. Otherwise, I think in Ottawa, we're not going to have a 92% compliance rate. That's what I'm worried about. So why not just advocate for and proposed where we know there are true conflicts, City of Ottawa, implement those changes? Is that possible?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So staff do have criteria, of course, for evaluating whether a right turn on red ban makes sense for an intersection. It's not working. Downtown, you have the highest concentrations of these, and it is a regular feature of being downtown that you almost get, run over by a driver taking right turn on red. So that is the current approach, and it's not effective, although absolutely would support the intersections that you mentioned. Obviously, hotspots like schools and community centers and libraries and that sort of thing really should be high on that list. Now, the reason that LPI, leading cyclist interval 2 is related, why those aren't sufficient is because it still doesn't prevent people, drivers from heading into the intersection. In fact, because an LPI takes place at the beginning of a cycle, right before a green light for drivers occurs, it's that transition period where I'm sure you've seen this. A driver will see the red happening and will try to sneak in that gap, that second and a half, 2 second gap, before before full green in the other direction, making it all the more difficult. So that's the very moment that a pedestrian is stepping out there into the intersection, and as dictated by the walk signal. So if anything, this combination is particularly dangerous. There's something else with that too. Yeah, I think that kind of configuration, as you say, it puts the pedestrian out even more visible to a driver. There's something for me that's really uncomfortable about that. It feels like we are essentially using pedestrians' bodies as signals to drivers, or even, something, a physical kind of plea for drivers to stop. I get very uncomfortable with that. We shouldn't be using pedestrians' bodies to stop, these, let's admit it, 2, in some cases 3-ton metal cages against the vulnerable flesh of humans. So LPIs, we should do them all over the place, but we should also do them in conjunction with banning right turn on red.
I appreciate that, and appreciate what you bring to the table. I'll just say that the intersections where we've had problems, where we installed a pedestrian advance, I'm not aware of any problems that have happened since that point. So I understand what you're saying. I do think there's some merit in getting the pedestrian out there first. But I think that there are more options to be considered as well. So thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, if I may just quickly add to that, this also could fall in the bucket of near misses, right? Certainly we should ask staff to investigate the question of whether there have been problems since the installation of LPIs, but I would say is likely that there have been near miss situations that occur nevertheless.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Manguise. Obviously, there will be questions to staff for clarification on many of the points you've made here today. So thank you for coming out and for your very professional delegation.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Chris Hercock, and you're online. Hey, Chris.
Hi, Councillor Turney. Do you hear me?
Good to see you. And you're no stranger to this place, so you have 5 minutes. The floor is yours.
Okay. Good day, Councillor Turney and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity for allowing me to speak today. My name is Chris Hercock, and I'm here on behalf of Vision Zero Ottawa, an organization committed to advancing a transportation system where no loss of life or serious injury is considered acceptable. Vision Zero is built on simple principles. No tragedies on our roads are preventable. Human life and health must be prioritized over all other objectives, and safe systems and design, not individual behavior, must guide decision making. I'm here today in support of Councillor Troster's inquiry and advocacy on regarding right turns on red in the urban core. Let me speak to alignment with this and the city's transportation master plan. Ottawa's city's transportation master plan already commits the city to reducing pedestrian exposure to motor vehicles, including additional opportunities to implement no right turn on red. If the staff response you have before you today does not align with this direction, it seeks to preserve the risk of the status quo instead of reducing exposure. It prioritizes driver convenience, and it ignores the city's own adopted TMP. This is not a small contradiction. It is a direct conflict between the city's stated goals and the operational choices being recommended. Why does Vision Zero Ottawa recommend or support no right turn on red in the core? Some key reasons why we believe that PWIC and council should move forward with stronger vulnerable transportation network downtown. That is 20% of cyclists and 5% of pedestrian FMIs involving right turning drivers is not an acceptable cost of doing business. Staff presented these collisions as being a small proportion, but Vision Zero rejects the idea that preventable tragedies are acceptable, especially those involving predictable turning conflicts. Many residents in Somerset Ward don't own cars. In Councillor Troster's ward, almost 30% of residents don't own a vehicle, and that number is likely to rise with densification. Choosing driver convenience over the safety of residents who walk, bike, or roll is not equitable. Vehicle size and blind spots have grown dramatically. Modern SUVs and pickup trucks are becoming increasingly large with large forward blind zones that elevate the risk of right turn collisions. Staff did not account for this rapidly growing hazard. Compliance concerns are overstated and unsupported. Staff suggested that might ignore no right turn on red signs. Yet the real world evidence, and William spoke to this, is that compliance at newly restricted intersections at 90%, Road 90% in San Francisco, and Ottawa drivers should be believed to be no different. So that is rules set expectations, not to be avoided because a minority might break them. And near misses matter. Even if they are hard to measure, I would not be surprised if Councillor Troster or any of the council hear from their residents on near misses on right turning vehicles. This, as William spoke to, does not appear in collision data, but shape experiences, especially for pedestrians, families with children, and seniors. Staff did not account for this enormous safety signal. On congestion and driver workload, staff acknowledge that right turn on red restrictions may initially increase congestion or frustration, and we agree. But we strongly disagree that the solution is to ease restrictions to reduce driver workload. For decades, transportation research has shown that making driving easier induces more driving. Making walking safer induces more walking. Providing safe, reliable transit induces more transit use. Our goal is a more livable, walkable, affordable downtown. Then prioritizing driveway throughput is the wrong lever. Safety, comfort, and predictability for vulnerable road users must come first. In conclusion, Public Works Infrastructure Committee has a clear choice. Council typically relies on staff expertise, and in most cases, that trust is well placed. But this is the exception. Staff recommendations today are at odds with the Transportation Management Plan, at odds with the Road Safety Action Plan, and at odds with creating safe, livable communities. This is a moment where Council or PWIC must choose between continuing decades-old convenience-driven practice or supporting safer, healthier, more modern, affordable city. On behalf of Vision Zero Ottawa, I urge you to support Councillor Troster's call for no rights on reds in the downtown core. I understand that choice will be difficult, but it is the choice that protects people. It is a choice that aligns with your own policy direction, and it is the choice that makes the city safer for everyone who walks, bikes, or rolls through the core. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Questions from Councillor Troster?
Hi, Chris. Thank you for your advocacy. And I think maybe the last time I saw you in person was at the vigil for the woman named Saloni who was killed crossing the road in front of City Hall just this summer. My purpose in submitting this inquiry and having it lifted on the agenda, thank you very much, Chair, was to have this conversation about the danger at intersections. And whether this is the right tool, and if it isn't the right tool, if there are other tools. Now, Saloni was not killed by a ride on red, but she was killed by a driver of a truck who was turning right, I believe on green, again, right in front of City Hall. Are there other measures that you would like us to consider? Because my goal in submitting this inquiry is to be able to have this conversation, to take it back to the community, and to come forward with a suite of recommendations to reduce road tragedies and preventable deaths in downtown Ottawa. So, Councillor Brockington mentioned the pedestrian advance. Are there other things that you would like to see and that you think we should be exploring as part of a stepped up plan to protect people from being hurt at intersections?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councillor Troster. And the answer is, of course, always yes. And I would say that those other measures, it comes to what we consider the ease of transportation, engineering, education, enforcement. Engineering is the hard one, and the city does have a list of dangerous intersections, which can be converted to protected intersections. That's the hard question because it involves funding, but it is the right thing to do. So protected intersections, accelerating that list that Ottawa has had on the books for I can't remember how many years, is a highly effective way of adding to the vulnerable user transportation network.
Thank you very much. And yes, I'll admit that my own frustration in how long it's taking to fix what we know are the most dangerous intersections in the city is certainly what had me reaching for a solution like a ban on right turns, which as is being shown by all of you who have come to committee to talk to about it, it's certainly not a dead issue. It is one option, and I appreciate you coming today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great. Seeing no further questions, thank you very much. Our next delegation, Amanda Brown. Amanda, welcome.
Okay, so my name is Amanda Brown, and I'm here to speak in favor of banning right turns on red in the downtown area. As counselors, the city staff response does not give you anything of substance to be able to make a decision off of. So I'm going to go through that. Starting with the response to question 1, for points 1 to 3, why are we putting the onus of road safety on pedestrians? There are a million things that can be done to reduce traffic and irresponsible drivers, like having a working transit system and bike lanes that keep bikes off the road. For point 4, just this week on the 24th, a truck decided it could not wait for me to cross the road, revved its engine, and drove at me, completely neglecting the stop sign right in front of them. He clearly wasn't concerned with non-compliance, so this means we should just get rid of all crosswalks and stop signs since they don't work 100% of the time. And for the last point, how many millions did we just put into the OPP budget? This is just an irrelevant point for me. Regarding question 2, why waste time repeatedly assessing all intersections individually when we can just implement the ban and do an assessment in a year and see how things are going? For question 3, this just doesn't give a full picture of what's happening on the streets of Ottawa right now. So these are incidents I've witnessed just this week. February 23rd at Bank in Elgin, someone ran through a red light while people were already approaching the crosswalk to go through. On my way back home on the bus later, a car rushed into a right turn on red on Rideau Street, pulling in front of the bus that was already in the middle of the intersection. On the 24th, I already mentioned the incident where a driver drove at me with malicious intent. But later, as I crossed the crosswalk to my building, someone began performing a right turn on green, slowly inching closer and closer to me, trying to get me to move faster across the road. At that same intersection on the 25th at 9 a.m., an SUV would go driving full force into the capital city mission drop-in at Rideau and Cobourg, killing 1 pedestrian and injuring 4 others. 4 out of 5 of these incidents were not reported. All saw pedestrians being placed at risk. How many incidents involving right turns on red just aren't represented in this report? However, the sentence that enraged me the most in this section was this. As a result, right turn on red restrictions would not address the majority, approximately 90%, of fatal and major injury collisions involving vulnerable road users. So they're saying the 10% just aren't worth doing anything about. Not enough people are dying for them to care. So I would like to tell a story about a single accident. When I was 12, my sister was hit by a transport truck and died. It was 5 a.m. and she was on her way to work. At a red light, the transport truck behind her didn't stop. Instead, it hit her head on. Her seatbelt failed and she was ejected through her windshield. She died in seconds, confused, alone, on cold black pavement, slowly pooling with her blood. When the police came to notify us, they didn't know her name. They called her Jamie Lynn Brown. Her name is Jamie Lee. Just a few months prior, I had visited Jamie in Sudbury with my dad and little sister. Now we all sat in a hotel room holding her ashes. She was bright and full of life and love. Sorry. And now she's merely fertilizer for the treehouse she used to climb when she was a little girl. Yet she was just one person. And to the staff at City Hall, that just isn't worth doing anything about to make a difference. I can only pray that if some counselors could prevent the death of my sister with a simple bylaw that takes them 5 seconds to pass, that they would do it. One person may mean nothing to the staff at City Hall, but they mean everything to someone else. Banning right turns on red is a simple step to protect the pedestrians of the city. I hope all of you can recognize the importance of safety over driver convenience and vote to ban right turns on red in the downtown area. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for that. Councillor Devine.
Thank you, Chair. Hey, Amanda. Please don't ever apologize for being emotional there. You have every right to be. I'm very sorry what happened to that person. And the only reason I want to talk to you about this is you have illustrated what I think for many is the big conversation and the big debate here is evaluating the trade-offs. You know, whether we prioritize safety at all expense, or whether we prioritize or concern ourselves over, let's say, traffic flow at all expense. And I completely understand being frustrated by that. And I'll just illustrate a situation that happened in my ward where about a year or two ago, I got an automatic ASE camera at one of the most dangerous locations in my ward on Merivale. It was so hard to get that done. And I did get it. Staff did eventually get it there, but they had to follow their rules, their procedures, and there are criteria. The first criteria, how much speeding happens at this location? It ranked number 1. The second criteria, what is the severity of that speeding at that location? In other words, how much faster than the speed limit are they going? It ranked near the top. The third criteria, what is the exposure of risk? In other words, how many kids are there that can be hit? It was near a school with a small population. In other words, compared to other locations in the city where more people could be hit, it ranked lower there. And so at that time, I did not get the camera because it didn't meet that criteria. All around that area, parents were saying, can we please get something here? Because what we're doing now is we're driving our kids to school when we only live freaking 2 blocks from here. And the answer I told them is, you're damn right it's dangerous. More people speed here than anywhere. People speed here like crazy, but there's just not enough kids to hit. Eventually, and staff was sympathetic, for sure, but they had to go by their process. Eventually, we got it. Now, we've lost it because of Premier Ford. But I just want to mention that what you are identifying there is that we have policies in place that perhaps do not prioritize what we, as the guardians of the public good, should be prioritized. So thank you for your delegation. Thank you for addressing that issue, and we'll continue talking about that. Thank you, Chair.
Great. I see no questions. I just want to say thank you, Amanda, for coming out, and I think Councillor Devine's illustrated it. We might have discussions at this table, and there will be questions to staff specifically on pedestrian safety. That's our number 1 goal. And before you leave, we might not agree on everything, but we certainly agreed with keeping automated speed enforcement in this community, a real tool that we had in our toolbox that was stripped from us. So as we work, our traffic staff, they're bobbing and weaving all the time, how to be able to slow traffic down, how to change things. So our deepest sympathies on behalf of the committee, and we'll keep that in mind during the rest of the delegations today. Thank you. So we have Marco's online. Okay, great. Marco, great. I don't think you're a stranger here, Marco. So if you wanted, you have Strong Towns Ottawa. Okay, perfect. You have 5 minutes. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Awesome. Yeah, hello, my name is Marco, and I'm here to delegate on behalf of Strong Towns Ottawa. We're a group that cares deeply about ensuring safe streets for the people who move around a city. We were surprised to see the reasonings for why the city recommends against piloting a right turn on red band in the downtown core. We also think the city misses many glaring points as to the benefits of a right turn on red band, and we urge the city to take a broader look at pedestrian and cyclist safety when it comes to right turns on reds. One of the rationales the city gives for refusing to ban right turns on reds stood out to us. The city suggests that drivers might become impatient and thus lead to aggressive driving if they have to wait too long at a red light. How can the city claim that we don't need to ban right turns on red because they wouldn't improve safety, yet in the same breath claims that banning right turns on reds would leave drivers to be so reckless due to being inconvenienced by just a couple seconds that they would kill or injure others on the road? These two claims can't reasonably coexist. Either the maneuver itself introduces risk, or we're acknowledging that current road users are unable to safely manage even minor delays. In either case, the appropriate response is not to design our streets to allow for driver convenience, but to reduce conflict points and protect the most vulnerable, not to preserve a movement that places them at risk. The city also mentions right collisions, with cyclists being an issue, but the obvious solution to this is having lead signals for pedestrians and cyclists, which are already done on many intersections. Another interesting point the city makes is that drivers might just quote unquote choose to ignore right turn on red restrictions, leading them to kill or injure pedestrians and cyclists. This seems like quite a weak defense of the status quo. Should we also remove our laws against murdering others because it might lead people to falsely assume that no one's going to kill them? While we understand it wasn't in the scope of the inquiry, we would strongly urge the city to take another look at the other data that must be considered. A major missed point is the fact that many collisions that happen from right turns on reds would fall under minor collisions, which make no appearance in this report. During the same time period as the data in the report, 960 total collisions with pedestrians and cyclists occurred at traffic signals, and 1,847 occurred total. This means that the data represented in the report shows less than 10% of overall accidents on our roads involving vulnerable road users, and it doesn't even touch on near misses. Many right turn on red incidences won't end up in a death or major injury, but are just as important to the safety and overall well-being of those walking in our streets. An obvious benefit to having a blanket right turn on red ban is that compliance would go up drastically. The current situation makes every single intersection a completely new experience for a driver. As someone who drives, it is absolutely ludicrous the amount of signs that you have to pay attention to. Having only particular intersections at particular times of day and particular days of the week ban right turns on reds means it's much harder to follow the rules, even if I want to. You're asking people to essentially stare at their watch and calendar while they drive to make sure they're complying with the confusing laws. Making this more straightforward would improve compliance, and it would drastically increase road safety. The report also doesn't bring up many of the other issues that come with right turn on reds, which might not lead to a direct injury or death. At almost every single intersection, you see cars inching forward while attempting to make a right turn on red. This type of maneuver leads to completely blocking a pedestrian's path on the crosswalk. This creates very dangerous circumstances where either pedestrian has to walk in front of the car who might not be looking at them, or it might lead them to walking behind them, which also has a host of other dangers. Given that almost a quarter of all signalized intersections in the downtown core have already some sort of ban on right turn on reds, at what point do we get to where we just say it's easier for everyone to put a blanket ban? Does it need to be 50% of intersections, 75, 99%? We already know that these interactions are unsafe, and thus we have banned them at many of our intersections, often, unfortunately, because someone was injured or killed at them. How many more residents must give their lives for us to make a sensible common sense decision that has been proven from studies all over the world? Pedestrians should not have to have their heads on a swivel to be able to move around safely in their neighborhoods. Everyone deserves to be able to travel safely where they need to go. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Great. Thank you for that. Looking around the board, seeing no questions. Thank you for coming out today. Our next delegation is Michelle. Oh, forgive me. We don't have Michael here. No? Okay, so we had someone leave us. So Sandra Steck. Oh, you're in person, in real life. Welcome. Hello. You have 5 minutes. The floor is yours, Sandra.
Okay, my name is Sandra Steck, and I'm here representing the Centertown Community Association. I am also a member of the Ottawa Council on Aging and co-chair of the Council on Aging's Pedestrian Safety and Walkability Committee. I have conducted snow mole audits in the city for the past few years. I have lived in Centertown for the past 15 years, and I walk a lot. I am here to express Centertown's Association's support for eliminating right turns on red lights through the Centertown. And like another speaker, I've had many near misses myself. When drivers approach an intersection, intending to turn right on a red light, their attention is often directed to the left, searching for an opening in traffic to accelerate into, or rather carefully scanning for people crossing in front of them. This action encourages drivers to make rolling stops or to stop as close as possible to the cross street instead of stopping before the defined crosswalk. If you are a frequent pedestrian, you likely know the experience of trying to cross the street, finding a vehicle in the curb lane, blocking the crosswalk in front of you, and as the driver looks for space in traffic to make the right turn into. There was a study done by the City of Ottawa, and it was done during the COVID years, and then there was 121 serious collisions, 23 involving left-turning vehicles, 93 involved vehicles that were not turning, and 5 involved right-turning vehicles. However, Ottawa City Police reported collision stats for 2024 showing a significant increase. 218 collisions involving pedestrians and 123 collisions involving cyclists. We, as pedestrians, are not feeling safe. I don't want to repeat things that everyone else has said, but I do because it makes everyone keep it in your head. Ottawa Police Services and the Coalition Reporting Center published their annual 2024 report on vehicle collisions with a total of 19,777 collisions. 16,788 were reported through the Collision Reporting Center. 2,989 required patrol response. And the other important data from this was 18 were total fatal collisions. 218 collisions involved pedestrians. 123 collisions involved cyclists. 218 collisions involved impaired drivers. The most collisions occurred in December and January. This data also shows that 16,787 collisions involved clear days, while environmental events making road conditions less favorable, such as road fog, mist, freezing rain, and snow, were noted for less than 5,000 collisions. Improving road safety and enforcing the rules of the road are significant priorities for the Ottawa Police Service and is dedicated to improving safety. The 2025 study that others have mentioned by the Canadian Automobile Association went beyond collision data to examine near miss. And as many have said, this happens. Intersections at 20 intersections across Canada using 360-degree cameras and AI analytics found that 9% of pedestrians, that's basically 1 in 10, at busy intersections experience conflicts with vehicles, more than half involving right-turning cars while the pedestrian had the right of way. Although most incidents were low to medium risk, they play a critical role in shaping the pedestrian experience. The single most important thing you can do to prioritize safety for speed in cities, and there's a whole lot of policies that do that, including banning right turn on red. Maintaining right turn on red is promoting speed, the lack of awareness of pedestrians, and banning it, promoting and prioritizing people moving safely. Thank you for your time and consideration. I just want to make one comment. Maybe the most important thing is I have a 15-year-old grandchild who will be biking from Centertown to De La Salle High School in Vanier, and I want him to be safe. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks for your delegation. And actually, I'm going to be a grandfather in March. So I'm looking at everything in a new lens all the time. So I appreciate that. We do have a question from Councillor Troster.
Thank you so much, Sandra. And I do remember our snow mole walk together. So thank you for all the work you do for pedestrian safety. And my daughter is almost 14 and she walks and cycles in the neighborhood. So I feel for you. I have my heart on my sleeve or my heart in my throat all the time worrying. And it's not because of her abilities, it's because of the environment. I know that you're involved with a whole range of things, including the Council on Aging. And I'm just wondering, because you cited the CAA study, which many people have commented, mentions near misses, which the staff report doesn't. And I'm just wondering if you could speak to how a series of near misses could impact mobility for seniors in Centertown, particularly.
Well, as you know, we're an aging population, or I'm an aging group. I think what I see, and I live just down the street at 10 the driveway, I see my fellow residents not going out. When I walk, I'm walking to places I want to walk to. That's why I live here. For a background, I lived in Winnipeg 32 years, so I understand snow. And I guess, I know that when someone walks out with a walker, a cane, they are at more risk because all of those people about to step out sometimes don't have the quick ability to step back. And I have to admit, from the time the toddler was being pushed around, my nearest miss was someone going through a red light. But if you're pushing someone else's wheelchair or a stroller and you have to pull it back to save them, that is more difficult. And there are many people in our building who are using wheelchairs independently, but those who have a caregiver doing it, and that makes it even more dangerous.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'll tell you that my first series of terrifying incidents involving cars turning right into me, almost being right hooked, was when I was literally pushing my baby into the intersection. It is a new form of vulnerability. And then when my child was on the back of my bike, and when you're literally protecting them life and limb and having to push them into traffic, it gives you a very new perspective on the vulnerability of road users. So
It is, well, my son lives here, obviously, if I have a grandchild, and he has always used a bike with his child on the back. And I know a number of times he was very frightened by what was a near miss, because it's one thing to put yourself at risk. It's another thing to someone you're really responsible for.
yeah, absolutely. And there were times when I've taken a cycling route with a baby on the back of my bike, and then I was like, nope, not doing that again. So then I ended up driving, right? Like, it changed my behavior because of a near miss. So thank you very much.
And he doesn't own a car, so just if you want to know how you really do it, you have one car and 4 drivers, and that's the other scary thing. The 5th one would be coming along.
Yeah. Oh, don't leave us yet. Councillor Kavanagh.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your delegation. Really appreciate your work with Council on Aging on the transportation side, particularly. I think this is something that should be looked at in terms of when we're talking about what we can do for seniors and in our overall older adult plan. So just want to thank you for raising the topic. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. And before you leave, Council on Aging, it's great. We actually have a great relationship, and Teresa's really cultivated that along with Alan Hubley and myself. I meet with them on a regular basis. I'm not sure if you're here as a representative of the group or an individual, but we liaise with them on a regular basis. And I just want to know, is this their position, is to ban right turns on red?
Yes, for both, I'd say yes.
So Coalition of Aging wishes for that. Okay, great. Thank you. Great. We have Jacob Critch.
Krish, can you
Yeah.
hear me?
Perfect. You have 5 minutes. The floor is, I'm just trying to look. Oh, there you are. There you are, Jacob.
Yes.
Great. Go right ahead.
Okay, can you hear me? Yes. Good. Okay, thank you. So I'm Jacob Krish. I live in Centertown, right at Bank in Somerset. I've lived there for, I don't know, 13 years now, and I have raised 2 children in this area. And I want to say about for some of the personal experience there about why it is that a right turn on red ban would be very helpful in Centertown in particular. We do not own a car. We are a household among that 30% who do not have a car. And so we go around by walking and biking, and when it functioned better, by OC Transpo. But increasingly, we do more walking and biking. And the conflicts that we have as part of life walking around in Centertown are real. And many things that council has done have helped to reduce those conflicts. The leading pedestrian interval that Councillor Brockington was talking about has been wonderful. That change at Bank in Somerset and at Somerset and Elgin in particular have really helped to reduce the conflict between cars that are turning with green and the pedestrians who are trying to cross the street. Right turn on red is a different conflict. It is a conflict that still comes every day as I walk around in the neighborhood, where cars, as has been said before, come because they are allowed to make this turn. They encroach. They come onto the crosswalks. And this is a thing where, has been described amply, that they are looking to the left to see whether it is safe for them to move, and they are not looking to the right, where pedestrians who are crossing with a walk signal or cyclists who are moving with their walk signal are coming from. And that conflict is unnecessary. It's a very small change in the time for a single car to go through. You cannot have very many cars that turn right on red inside of a cycle time. Once you actually get the green light for that intersection, you're going to be able to move them through. It is, I would be shocked to find that right turn on red significantly increases the speed with which cars get through as busy an area as Centertown. That's not mentioned in the staff report about how much of a time savings does this actually occur. The light cycles are just not very long. It is well less than a minute until that car at the front is going to get a green light. And what happens is that we have this conflict. Now, it's very different in the urban area of Centertown, where I live, than it is in a suburban area like where I grew up. In a suburban area, you have many fewer vulnerable road users walking around, and in general, you have much better sight lines. So the cars can see before they go to take a right turn on red whether or not it is safe for them to do so. The packed in on-street parking, the buildings that obstruct it force cars to encroach to determine whether or not they can take a right turn on red in the downtown core. And as we have more people without cars going into the new housing developments that are wonderfully being built in the area, this problem is only going to increase. Now, I don't own a car, but I do drive a car. I rent a car when I need them. I'm not anti-car. I have chosen to live in a place where I don't need them. And as a driver who drives around in the area, I personally find right turn on red to be stressful because cars behind me want me to take it even when I cannot evaluate whether it is safe. And so I do the exact behavior that I am describing here. If I am at an intersection that allows right turn on red, I will encroach onto that crosswalk and I will hope that I am not blocking pedestrians. I'm looking for them, but I would love to have that taken away from me. Driving around Montreal is so much less stressful for exactly this reason. I just wait for the green light and then I can turn. It's really simple. Doing this in a blanket way is a simpler way and it makes sense in an area that has very high density of pedestrians as we are talking about in Centertown. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for that. Councillor Troster.
Hi, Jacob. Thank you for being here. I feel the same way as a driver that the rule of the road is that I have to take that right on red and somebody's always nudging me to do it, even if I don't feel that it's safe. So the debate we seem to be having at this table is whether kind of a pilot within downtown Ottawa is a better option than just focusing on specific dangerous intersections. And what I've always maintained is as a driver, and I also drive and I also walk and I cycle, that the inconsistency from intersection to intersection impacts my behavior as a driver. What I'm hearing a lot of people say is just having one rule for a specific area, a very dense area where we have a ton of pedestrians would ultimately be safer. But I am hearing across this table, some other people are like, well, why don't we just look at the danger zones? What would your preference be as someone who lives in the neighborhood?
Oh, I would love to have it be blanket. I think that would be simpler as a driver. I think it would be easier for drivers to just understand that in this area, they're all there. You would, of course, need to put up signs at all of the intersections, just like you would have it. But I think it would just be simpler in order to make that just a blanket rule. And I also think that we don't have traffic lights at every intersection. Many intersections that are lower trafficked, have fewer people at them, have only stop signs, and those always function in this way. Traffic lights go into intersections that by their nature have a lot of people that are around them. It has a lot of cars and they have a lot of people because they're in Centertown. And I think that if you were to go look, I mean, I'm interested in trying to find what is this so-called intersection that is in Centertown that has a traffic light and yet does not have a large population of people who are walking by it all the time. Certainly, I walk by intersections. Those are the ones that I walk by. I'm not sure which they are that are there. We could go and talk through them, but I think that once you get to the point where a large fraction of the intersections in the community are the ones that have people where we should be banning right turn on red, then it makes more sense to make it a blanket ban.
Thank you. And I know that you have children that are similar to the age of my children, because I know you from the community. We've been discussing the issue of near misses and how that impacts pedestrian behavior. As someone with growing kids who want to be more independent, how have those near misses affected their behavior or where you're willing to let them go on their own in the neighborhood?
Yeah, it's a real issue. I mean, I have a sixth grader who I walk with her to school every day. It's about 2 kilometers. We cross the canal. She goes to Franco Jeunesse, which is right near where you are all right now. And she does not want to walk by herself. And this is because of her fear of the traffic that she has been dealing with since she was born. And the this is not only about right turn on red. It's not. There are other issues. But it is a significant part of her fear of being around. I think that by the time that she is in 6th grade, she should be able to do this by herself. Like, I do. I think that that's a reasonable expectation for a child. But I respect the concern that she has, that she expresses with us. And so I walk with her through these intersections and help to navigate them. She's very good at them. I think she should be able to do this herself. But I also think that we should work to make policies and systems that make this safer so that our kids, she's not even really that young, are able to walk around this community.
Thank you. Yeah, we often hear, oh, kids these days, they can't roam the way they want to. Well, back in the day, we didn't have trucks that were like higher than children that with bad sight lines. And, you know, we didn't have this kind of densification necessarily in certain parts of the city. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here. And I think the issue of near misses and how that limits the behavior and sets lifelong patterns for children of how they move around the city as they get older is an issue that's hard to quantify, but I think it's a really important one to discuss. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great. Councillor Devine.
Hey, Jacob, thank you for your delegation. I hadn't planned on asking you a question, but you kind of flagged for me another important issue here. And that issue is how concerns that, staff may have at the operational level over right turn on red, sometimes those concerns conflict with our larger policy goals. And when you're talking about, living in the downtown experience, and I'm not saying that I'm taking a position on what we should do about right turn on red, but one thing I know about all of our safety mechanisms is that when a safety mechanism is consistent and predictable, it augments the effectiveness of that safety mechanism. One reason that right turn on red ban in Montreal is so easy to understand because it's an island. You cross a bridge, you're in that territory. Ottawa is different than that, but if the highest preponderance of pedestrians and cyclists is in the downtown area, let's say downtown and inner wards, and if our larger policy goal is to increase active transportation and density in those areas, one way to attract people to live, work, and play in an area is to make them feel safe. We're going to be talking more later about the importance of putting a concern over near-miss conflicts. If there is currently a patchwork approach to right turn on red in the downtown area, one could easily argue that we could enhance predictability and effectiveness by applying a targeted geographic ban. I'm not saying that that's a conversation here for today, but it's a conversation to be had at some point. Thank you.
That was wonderful. I completely agree.
I'm glad you do.
There you go. Thank you very much. Thanks, Jacob. Next up, we have Alex Gill. Oh, yeah, there's Alex. And we see you there, Alex, and you have 5 minutes. We can hear you loud and clear. The floor is yours.
Hi, thank you very much. I'm Dr. Alex Gill. I'm a resident of Central Ottawa since 2008, and I'm here to speak about the personal experience around road safety and why this is why I support Councillor Troster's proposal to explore prohibiting right turns on red in downtown Ottawa. The stimulus for me to want to speak to the committee is a very personal incident. My youngest child, who was 10 years old at the time, was struck by a car on October 11th, 2024 by a right turning car on their way home from Elgin Street Public School. Very fortunately, they returned home bruised, frightened, but not seriously hurt. This was the second incident at the same intersection in that year, involving a student from the same school that I'm aware of. And I'm aware of other parents at the school deeply concerned about road safety in the area. There's a lot of focus on the potential gains in safety from this measure. Will this be a thing? I think one of the things to look at in this issue is about what sort of culture of driving are we establishing in the city? Do we prioritize the safety of all our citizens, or are we privileging a very minor convenience to drivers. I walk, cycle, and drive in downtown Ottawa. And what I've noticed in recent years is what seems to be a real deterioration in road safety. That increasingly more reckless behavior by drivers, perhaps in some respects responding to congestion, in bigger vehicles, traveling faster. It is getting really unnerving. And when I talk about this issue of prohibiting the right turn on red, not just my safety as a pedestrian, as a cyclist, but also as a driver, because one thing I found really disturbing is that when I am stopped at a red light in downtown Ottawa to permit other traffic, road users to pass safely, to permit pedestrians to pass, it is now my expectation that I will get aggressive responses from drivers who are behind me who seem to expect that I'm just going to roll on through whatever the road conditions are. That is now seems to be our expectation in this city. This really can't be seen as working. A right turn on red allowance presumes that the driver is going to stop, observe, and take responsibility for their decision. That isn't what is happening. Okay? Fundamentally, I'd like to finish as a parent in downtown Central Ottawa. Statistically, the greatest risk to my children is road traffic. This is a preventable issue. So why aren't we working to prevent it? This may not be the whole solution, but I think it's a good step. We should be taking this step and looking at taking more. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Alex. Our final delegation on this. Oh, my apologies, Councillor Trosser.
Thank you, Alex, for being here. And I just want to send a shout out to your child who, when I saw them at Pride this summer, hammered me on why that intersection has not been fixed where they got hit by a car. When the children are telling us that they don't feel safe walking around their neighborhood and they don't understand why a year later the problem hasn't been fixed, I think we need to listen to them. So I'm glad your child is okay. May I ask what the nature of their injuries were?
They had bruising to their shoulder where they'd been impacted by probably the wing mirror.
Right. So this is
of a turning vehicle, an SUV.
They end up in hospital or no?
Fortunately, no.
Okay. So I'm going to ask staff about this. That incident would not be captured in the statistics that they quoted in this report, right? It wouldn't be considered a major injury, but it obviously had a huge impact on your child. Has it changed?
Changed like how they were felt their route to school.
Right.
And in fact, they'd been walking independently to and from school at that point and now wanted to be accompanied.
Yeah.
Like this is fundamentally impacting perception of safety and the reality of safety of people in downtown Ottawa.
Thank you. Yeah, and we often hear when it comes to, security and policing issues that feeling safe is as important as objectively being safe. And I would argue the same thing when it comes to road safety, because all it takes is a near miss and then you don't feel safe and then you just change your route or you change your mode of transportation. And if that starts when you're a child, I can only imagine it has an impact for the rest of your life. So thank you so much, Alex. I really appreciate you being here, and say hello to your kiddo for me and let them know we're working on it.
Thank you very much, Ariel. I appreciate your efforts.
Great. Thank you for that. And last but not least, my good friend Florence, I think we were waving signs at an ASE camera one day too, trying to keep those in place back in the day.
Indeed. Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I represent Bike Ottawa and I live in Vanier, where many residents don't have a car. While I was getting ready to delegate, I was wondering why the banning of right on red even warrants a discussion. Why we have to defend the right to be safe outside of a car. I read the staff report and I was struck by the picture it's painting. It's not about moving people safely. It's about moving cars and getting drivers to their destination faster. And it does not reflect the reality and complexity of getting around outside of a car. I'll give you 2 examples of close calls I've had recently. Not long ago, I was riding in a painted bike lane, then through an unprotected intersection, on a green light with no right on red restriction. If I were to believe the report, I'd be more at risk with right on red restrictions as more drivers would turn right and into my space after the light turns green. Let me tell you the reality of things. If the light is green in the first place, and I'm traveling with traffic towards the intersection, the danger is already there. In my case, the danger came from a driver turning right on red onto my street. Another part of the risk puzzle that's not reflected in the report. The driver, for the record, stopped at the last second. Another time, I was walking, yes, I do walk, and I had started crossing a street on a pedestrian green. A driver coming from my left was going to turn right on red and saw me at the last second. I jumped back. What would have happened if I assumed I could cross as I had the right of way? I don't know, and I did not want to find out. The report says right on red restrictions can reduce risk at one crosswalk, but then create more risk at the next crosswalk within the same intersection. There are solutions that can be used in conjunction with right on red prohibition. It's called dedicated signal faces. Next time I'll delegate in French. When I go back to my hometown of Besançon in France, that's how it works. No right on red, and whatever your mode of travel, either you have the green or you don't. I'm lost in my notes. I must say it's nice not to have to worry about being hit by a driver looking for an opening in traffic. Now, why would we cater to drivers based on possible non-compliance of right on red restrictions and possible aggressive behavior? Why should we decide not to protect people walking, biking, or rolling? This is backward thinking. The data presented in the report is partial at best. It only includes collisions involving death or serious injuries. If you're not seriously injured, you don't count. What we need is a forward-looking, holistic approach to road safety that includes no right on red, speed mitigation, better transportation options, better transit, and a connected cycling network. In conclusion, is right on red ban the way to go? Absolutely. It's part of what the city should have in its toolbox. In the downtown core alone, over half of trips taken are done by other means than cars. That's huge. A right on red ban would align with the city's official plan that states that, and I quote, the convenience and safety for pedestrians, cyclists, and transit users shall take priority over private motor vehicle access in the downtown core. I'd go even further. Eventually, we should write ban on red, right on red across the city. I ask you to ask yourself this question. Why is there such a disconnect between the staff report and users' experiences? Why can Ottawa not be a city where there are 0 deaths, when it is the case and stated goal in other cities, including Hoboken, New Jersey, where no one has been killed on their roads in 9 years, or Helsinki, a metropolis the size of Ottawa, that has just had no deaths on its roads in 1 year. Thank you.
Merci, France. Mon collègue Lulov, s'il vous plaît.
Merci pour votre présentation et vous êtes toujours les bienvenus à parler français ici. Toujours. Merci.
Merci encore. Mon collègue Councilor de Roche.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. C'est le même commentaire de conseiller Lulov, de s'il vous plaît parler en français. Nous avons des politiques du bilinguisme à la ville d'Ottawa et vous êtes libre de parler en français. Merci.
Merci. I stumble in English occasionally.
Non, c'est très bien. C'est une bonne présentation à la réunion. Merci. Hein? So thank you for coming out today. At this point, I'm looking, I don't see any motions on the table at this point, so I'm going to ask Vice Chair Kitts to read a motion in so we can go to questions to staff next, and this is presented to us first. Vice Chair Kitts.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm reading this on your behalf. Whereas qualified traffic engineering professionals have advised that permitting right turns on red may in certain circumstances pose risk to pedestrian safety. And whereas available data supports maintaining the city's current targeted location-specific approach to restricting right turns on red where warranted. And whereas with the exception of one municipality, no jurisdictions across the country have implemented a comprehensive citywide prohibition on right turns on red. And whereas a blanket prohibition on right turns on red could contribute to increased vehicle queuing, delays to public transit operations, and higher greenhouse gas emissions due to additional idling. Therefore, be it resolved that staff continue to use the current hybrid approach to right turns on red lights, and be it further resolved that city staff continue to review all intersections permitting right turns on red with the primary objective of prioritizing and safeguarding pedestrian safety.
Great. So that is in front of us, so we can solidify where we want to go since this was added to the agenda. That being said, we have questions to staff at this point, and you can include your conclusion and roll up as well at the same time if you wish. First up, Councillor Troster.
Hi, Chair. Before we have questions to staff, why was this motion not included before now? It seems to run contrary to everything that the delegates are telling us today. And also, why is it necessary to have a motion suggesting we're going to keep doing what we're already doing if we're doing it already?
Well, I've asked the Vice Chair to move this on our behalf, and at the request, we were asked to go into this further, certainly in regards to doing extra studies, which we presented back here today. By adding it to the agenda, I've asked with the clerk's office and the city committee chair, we are certainly allowed to add this in to, again, now that it's presented as an agenda item, and we had delegations out to speak to it fulsomely, that we're able to take a position and vote if we're supporting staff or not, because we have heard a lot of concerns around support of the staff decisions that had been made. So we'd like to solidify if this committee is supporting staff in their report.
So, correct, but this is not saying whether the committee agrees with the report. This motion
It actually is.
Is forestalling the possibility of any further action on this. This is simply an inquiry that was lifted, and people have come here to share their opinion. This motion was not on the table for them to debate when this item was put on the agenda. They did not speak to this motion. They spoke to their concerns with the report.
Certainly, but again, when we lift things without, and we'll ask the clerk's office to confirm this, when things are added to the agenda and it's not as part of the standard agenda practice, which it was added, without giving 2 weeks notice to the public to come in and allow for that to take place, certainly we're allowed to make this a voting item. And that's what we're doing today. Clerks, sorry.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, just to confirm with the response to inquiry being added for consideration to hear delegations, a motion on that's related to the matter is in order.
Thank you.
I think point of order. So I'm going to make a point of order. I might not be doing the right procedure, but I would like to get clarity on the motion that is presented. I am comfortable with the prospect that if an item is lifted to the agenda, a motion related to that agenda item can certainly be in order. And I wouldn't mind seeing the motion that we just saw, but if I understand correctly from what I just read, the motion does not seek to validate staff's response to the inquiry. If I interpret the motion correctly, it basically says, let's continue to proceed as normal, as we already do. In other words, the motion seems to be seeking to just maintain the status quo, which I don't see any other motion attempting to alter the status quo. And B, if the motion only seeks to maintain the status quo, I would like to assume that it's not necessary at all. It would seem to be some kind of motion to attempt validation of the status quo, which I don't necessarily think is a matter that should be brought before council here. I'm not worried about how the motion is contrary to what the delegate said. That's not my concern. But I'd like to ask staff, can I ask staff a question for a point of order?
You can absolutely ask the clerk's office.
Can I ask?
And they can determine if it's a point of order or not.
So, clerk's office, during a point of order, may I ask a question for clarification to staff?
Just, Mr. Chair, first thing, chairs rule on points of order, but staff can advise. My understanding from what the member has questions on whether or not to proceed with this motion, that might be for the chair to rule on the point of order. And then my understanding is the chair was calling for questions to staff for debate. And maybe
Correct.
as part of that process and the speakers list, any member can ask questions of staff for
Isn't
debate.
necessarily to ask staff about whether to proceed with the motion. If I'm allowed to ask a question to staff, my question is to get their understanding of the nature of the motion before I might vote on it.
Certainly, and I believe as chair, I will take this opportunity to say, certainly you can ask staff, is this what we're essentially doing, which is probably the case, and why you would have, and again, I've made a ruling on this. I think we've spent a long time. It's created a dramatic amount of confusion in the city. I've had nothing but emails along with people, and I want to make sure we have clarity through the questions to staff about what the responses are within the report that are very clear. And if we wish to support that, to avoid the confusion in the public. So I've ruled on this. If you don't wish to see this on the floor, feel free to challenge the chair and we can take a vote and we'll allow the clerk's office to take that.
And I'm not sure if I'm looking to challenge the chair. I'm just looking to see if I can use a point of order to ask a question to staff. I can't?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
You can ask staff questions.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, certainly you can ask staff questions. That's the whole point. Absolutely. So I'm looking at the board here. We'll go to questions to staff. We can take the motion down so we can see all the faces as lovely as they are. So committee members, I'll go to Councillor, you're on committee, right? Yeah, Councillor Devon.
Well, I'm not up yet. Oh, I am?
You are.
All right. Hey, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Troster, for submitting this inquiry, because I do think it produced a staff response that I believe warrants some scrutiny. So no one here, as I can understand it, is claiming that right turn on red restrictions are a silver bullet. What I do believe they are, however, is a proven and effective response to specific, well-documented safety problems at intersections where the vast majority of conflicts occur. In our Transportation Master Plan, Policy 6.4 explicitly directs the city to reduce pedestrian exposure at intersections. The relevant section reads, and I'm going to quote it, "As part of making it safer and easier to cross the road, the city will continue to pursue intersection designs that reduce pedestrian exposure, including seeking additional opportunities to implement no right turn on red restrictions as set out in the Road Safety Action Plan." So, as I understand that, right turn on red restrictions are not an untested idea. They are an evidence-based safety tool explicitly named in council-approved policy. What concerns me, based on what we can interpret from the staff response and based on the evaluation criteria described in the response, is that we seem to be prioritizing, and my concern is how those policies are applied. So I have some comments and questions to that effect. As cited in Councillor Troster's inquiry, the June 2025 CAA study found that 55% of pedestrian conflicts and 50% of cyclist conflicts involved right-turning vehicles, making right turns the single largest source of near-miss risk at intersections. And I'm glad that several delegates raised the issue of near-miss conflicts, because so many of our active transportation policy goals on mode shift or achieving residential density require increased perceived safety for pedestrians and cyclists. Ironically, in Ottawa, the intersection that was part of the study, Merivale and Viewmount, in my ward, where right turn on red restrictions were installed 1 year after the study, earlier requests from my office were denied because of the impact on traffic flow. My first question, having reviewed the criteria used for the case-by-case evaluation of intersections for right turn on red restrictions, what consideration is given to avoiding near-miss conflicts with pedestrians and cyclists as compared to relying on history of collisions alone?
Thank you for the question through you, Chair. So we do use near miss data when we're doing an in-depth review of an intersection that has been identified for safety improvement. So the first step in the process is to do a network screening, take a look at all of the intersections in the city. We rely on collision data, volume data, things like that to do that network screening because that data is available for all the intersections in the city. However, the near miss data requires special equipment, typically a consulting assignment, so we don't have citywide data on that. So it's not part of our network screening to help identify locations, but we do use that as a tool to help identify what's happening at the intersection when it's being identified for study, so that we can select the appropriate countermeasures to address what's happening.
So that doesn't mean that we negate the importance of considering near-risk conflicts in terms of addressing safety. Correct?
We do use it when we're studying an intersection that's being identified through our network screening. So if it prioritizes high from a collision perspective, volume perspective, then we would use that as a tool to help identify the best measures and get a better understanding of what's actually happening at the intersection and not just rely on the collision data.
Thank you. Now over to another issue in the response. So a central rationale in the staff response is concern about increased risk due to low compliance from drivers with RTOR restrictions. To me, that implies an expectation that pedestrians and cyclists must modify their safe and legal behavior because we have implicitly accepted that drivers will behave illegally. Now, we're about to go through a process to lower speed limits all across the city, knowing full well that compliance with existing speed limits is low to begin with, and achieving any respectable level of compliance with lower speed limits will take considerable time. Why are we willing to rationalize low compliance on some safety measures, but we don't apply the same logic to right turn on red restrictions?
Chair, can I just take a step back here, and we will get to definitely part of your question. I think when we look at the response, first we were responding basically to the questions that were raised in the inquiry. When we look at basically our mandate is to move people. It's not just to move cars, it's to move people. The direction that we also have from council is through the Road Safety Action Plan. And that's basically a clear mandate to reduce and eliminate fatal and major injuries on our roadways. And there is a key focus, a key emphasis area is on the vulnerable users, cyclists and pedestrian. So that is the lens that we apply when we look at every decision. It's a lens of safety. It's not just a lens of how do we move cars quicker through intersections. It's with a safety lens. That's why when you look at our network as a whole, we're not saying that we're not implementing red turn on red prohibitions. We have 115 or 114 intersections where we have implemented because it was deemed from a safety perspective to be warranted. I think the issue right now is a decision between making a blanket decision around applying it throughout versus how do we apply it in areas where it's deemed warranted. And I want to go back to the CAA study that keeps getting qualified because there is a lot of great information in there. I think when you peel the onion in terms of that report does not recommend basically that municipalities implement prohibitions either as a blanket. What it does do is basically the approach that we've taken right now is use a safe systems approach, look at red turn on red restrictions where appropriate, apply lead pedestrian times also where appropriate, and then look at the intersection designs themselves. When it comes to the driver behavior that we're pointing to, that's the piece that we're all struggling with in terms of how do we increase compliance with all of the rules of the law. What we're suggesting here is that just implementing more broadly turn restrictions doesn't mean that basically it's going to increase compliance or that it's even going to increase the safety at those intersections. So we're trying to use the data also to be mindful around, are we really increasing the safety at those intersections, putting a focus on our vulnerable road users?
Thank you. I know that just by putting a measure in place, it's not going to automatically increase compliance. But what I'm trying to say is, it seems that concern over low compliance is being used as a rationale for not having these kinds of restrictions, when in fact, there's already low compliance with the existing rule. Very few people actually stop at the stop sign before they go through the red. So what I'm trying to ask is, if staff is centralizing low compliance as a rationale for not advancing right turn on red restrictions, why do we not use that same concern about low compliance? If we're about to lower speed limits, we can expect low compliance there too. Why do we apply the policy the concern in one way, but not in the other way?
The low compliance, through you, Chair, is not the main factor that we use to.
Okay, it's one item.
We're not implementing a no right turn on red. So no right turn on red, there's two crosswalks a motorist goes through when they make a right turn. So there's the one in front of them and the one on their right-hand side. So the no right turn on red will help reduce conflicts on the crosswalk right in front of you. If you implement a no right turn on red, you're increasing the number of right turns that occur when the crosswalk on your right-hand side has the green, has the walk. So you're concentrating all of the turns at the same time that you're concentrating all of the walking, all of the cycling that is heading in that same direction. So you're increasing the exposure on this crosswalk, but potentially decreasing the exposure on the one right in front of you. So we balance all of that and we look at all of it and we see who's using which crosswalks, who's at the intersection when we make these decisions. The compliance, it's a factor, but it's not the main driver for us deciding whether or not we put in a no right turn on red. We look at the mix of traffic, the mix of users at the intersection, and we implement the restrictions where we think there will be a true safety benefit.
Okay. Thank you. So you were mentioning the same TMP policy that I was talking about before, policy 6.4, which explicitly incorporates the road safety action plan. In the staff response, it refers to that safety policy. It changes the language a little bit. It says each intersection is evaluated for factors such as pedestrian and cyclist volumes, sight lines, intersection designs, collision history, and operational impacts. I understand, I've heard that term before. I understand operational impacts to be concerns about traffic flow. Can staff clarify whether operational impacts as a criteria are part of the road safety action plan as adopted by council, or whether staff are applying an expanded decision framework beyond what council approved?
The criteria for evaluating intersections for no right turn on red was a deliverable of the road safety action plan. So in the year in which we brought forward the proactive review of all of the signalized intersections in the city under the road safety action plan, we also developed that criteria through the road safety action plan.
Right. I know I'm at time. I have a few other questions related to that, but I'll get to them after other speakers. But thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much, Councillor Bradley.
Thank you, Chair. First, I just wanted to say thank you to all the public delegations that came out today. I didn't come into this conversation today thinking I was going to say much on the issue. To be honest, don't support a full ban on no right on red citywide, but I was moved by many of the delegations and their stories today, and it sort of has given me a pregnant pause on how I might want to approach this in the future. But what I didn't expect today was to limit the discussion completely. And I think that the motion that was put on the floor sort of sets a tone that says, you know, we don't want to make any changes here. We want to stick to the status quo. And I don't think that's fair to the members of the public that came out to cut off that conversation in such short order. So I guess I'm looking for some clarification on the motion, because I think that that's what it does. I think it limits our ability to move forward on any type of potential localized pilot project in the downtown core, where we might see and be able to analyze the data and the effectiveness of such, what's the term I'm looking for? How effective, sorry, no rights on reds could be. So does this motion limit our ability, or any councillor's ability, to bring forward perhaps a motion that would look at a localized pilot on no right on red?
No answer, but no. This is literally basically just saying, yeah, we have a great presentation that's come for us. We'll continue on the path that we've always continued on. And pedestrian
So
safety will
staff-
be priority. Yeah.
I'd like to hear
What
that
about
from
the
staff
staff?
directly.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chair, to the point that's being raised, Councillor, I and certainly Krista and I do not interpret basically the motion to say we do no longer look for other opportunities in terms of how we make our intersections safer. Our current, I think what it does is support basically the efforts that we've been doing through the Road Safety Action Plan around how do we continue to make all of our intersections safer? How do we ensure that we use data to be able to inform our decisions? So to me, it's not a status quo in terms of taking our foot off the gas in terms of looking at safety and safety opportunities. Pilots are always going to be part of how we look at implementing things, looking at different technology, a lot of references to AI. We will continue to look at opportunities to leverage AI and cameras and all that to be able to do some of the analysis that we need to do. So I do not view this motion as basically just put your focus elsewhere. That safety will always be the primary focus.
Okay, fair. So maybe this is more of a procedural question, because to me, when I read continue to use the current hybrid approach to right turns on red, if someone was to bring forward a motion to initiate a pilot, then it might be some sort of reconsideration of our approach to no rights on red. So I'm just trying, maybe from the clerk's office could respond to this. How would they interpret this motion if someone was to bring forward a different approach to no rights on red in the near future?
Mr. Chair, I just want to note the city clerk is on the call and is ready to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it would depend on the nature of the motion. So I've heard from staff since I joined this meeting that this motion would not, in their opinion and their interpretation, preclude proceeding with specific localized measures. Whether if there was to be a substantive revisiting of the decision of committee and council, then that motion would need to be looked at in the with consideration to the rules for reconsideration, in the opinion of the chair at the time.
So I don't want to limit anything today. I think we're just at the beginning of a conversation. And I think road safety has been top of mind for everybody in this room and on this committee. And so, like, for example, clerk, if we were to bring forward, or if someone was to bring forward a motion that said, let's look at a pilot project within the boundaries of Centertown to ban all no rights on red, would that be considered substantive or would that not?
Not sure I'm in a position to answer that absent a motion to look at. The mover might be able to speak to the intent.
We have a pilot project in Centertown to ban no rights on red. Like, I'm not sure that, I think this motion is intended to limit any action by a ward councillor or any councillor to explore this further. As the chair had said, this is to confirm that we support staff's position. I think that by receiving an inquiry, that's sufficient. I don't think we need a motion. If there is nothing that this motion limits, which it sounds like it does, then why do we need a motion?
Well, again, just to be clear, again, you can introduce a pilot. This is just reaffirming that this report that's come forward, we're acknowledging, we're accepting it, and we would like to have a vote on it because there is great confusion. All the headlines in the media right now are city council voting right on red. And we're receiving those emails. So this will add clarity. And if people wish to move for a pilot, they can, and this could be confirmed, they could certainly go ahead and do that. Nothing changes any of that whatsoever. So if you want to strip wording out and just say, we received this and call a vote on it, I'm quite content with that as well.
For my knowledge of procedure, I don't think we need to vote on an inquiry. I think we would just receive it. So I don't think the motion is necessary. If you'd like revised language that says, let's receive the inquiry, I'm happy to put that forward as a replacement.
Well, we'll ask the clerk's office, but if we can just have a recorded vote on receiving the inquiry, I don't even care about the wording, but I think we do have to acknowledge to the public to clarify the confusion because this narrative has occupied quite a bit of time. And there's been a lot of people that have come forward. And again, I want to get to the substantive questions to the staff and go through some of what's in the report. I haven't heard any of that yet, by the way, about what they provided with detail. I'll get to those questions later on, but I think it behooves us if we don't at least acknowledge pedestrian safety is at the core principle, and that's directly in the motion. But again, maybe the clerk's office or committee coordinator can confirm. Is there a way that we can just simply have a vote on this just so we acknowledge
Voting,
it.
receiving the inquiry, is that to clarify?
Well, it's not it's an agenda item now, so it's a little different. When the inquiry came back as IPD, as soon as we added it in, we had delegations, debate and discussion. We didn't even promote it. This is the problem with not doing notice of motion for 2 weeks. So I'll look to the clerk to see what the feedback is, and I'm at your mercy.
I know Mr. Tremblay is there in the room and is, I think,
you're Avi over there.
But happy to provide that. There is currently a motion on the floor. It would be in order to just receive that motion and not take any further action, or vote on one or the other of the substantive clauses, one of which speaks to staff conducting a comprehensive review. So those would be options available to the committee in this case, or if the motion is withdrawn, to just receive the response to inquiry and take no further action.
Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate it. I didn't intend to ask questions today. It was because of the motion that's why that's what we're discussing. I would request that the mover consider to withdraw it, and then we can just receive the inquiry as it was intended. Thank you.
Yeah, and again, I'll look to the will of the committee. I have no problem with removing it as long as we can be very clear and we can get the questions to staff. I think that's the important part. We're forgetting the pedestrians here, everybody. We can have bun fights all day, but the reality is there's been a lot of confusion on this file. People think, you look at the headlines, it all says council voting to ban right turns on red. That's a problem for us. So we want to make sure that this doesn't come back. I guess the question would be, by us receiving this, if we ever did want to ban right turns on red, would a motion have to come forward here? And this will that would satisfy me to end this complete discussion, because if that's confirmed, then we can just receive the motion. That is now part of the agenda. Yes.
Mr. Chair, if you're seeking just a response to that, receiving the inquiry doesn't change anything. And if there is a motion down the road at a later date with specific direction to staff, that would be considered at that time, either through notice of motion or at a later date. But should you just wish to receive the inquiry, the response inquiry would be received. But as the clerk has pointed out, you do have a motion currently on the floor.
Okay, great. So we'd require something substantive if we were looking to ban right turns on red at this point to come to this committee. It's not by us saying this, suddenly pilots aren't going to pop up here and there. Something actually has to be in place for this, correct? I'm actually looking at staff. Like, you guys would know, if we were looking at blanket bans on right turns on red, would this have to come back to this committee? Yes. If we just simply received this report?
Yes, it would come back to this committee, and I would suggest that the context that it comes back to the city or to committee is through the road safety action plan.
Yeah, and that's where everything should be happening
in the past.
Absolutely. Well, I think we have a clear understanding of that now. So if you're good with that, I'll gladly remove the wording. We'll have it, and we can certainly receive the report. We'll see where the hands go, but I do have questions for staff that I'll ask a little later on. And again, if you wish to continue and have your wrap up, no problem, Jessica. I appreciate that. And nobody wants to be caught in this jam. But certainly, at least it highlights that this is the end of the right turn on red discussion. And that was the objective. Questions of staff? Councillor Gower.
Thank you, Chair. When is the road safety action plan coming back to this committee, or when do you intend to bring it back to the committee?
Thank you, through you, Chair. We are currently working on it in 2026 and plan to bring it back to PWIC in 2027.
Okay. And part of the delay is related to the changes in the automated speed enforcement and budgetary issues. Is that part of the challenge?
The plan was always to do a comprehensive update of the plan starting in 2026 with a report back in the new term of council. Part of the delay in our 2025 report is due to the ASC and the budgetary changes related to the loss in revenue from the cameras.
Okay, because I see part of this as prioritizing it's probably not reasonable to ask staff to do everything we want to do around road safety at once. And I think road safety action plan is probably a good place to decide which things do we really want to dig into and focus our budget and our staff resources on first. There's the Fatal Collision Review Committee, and they do, I think it's called an annual report, but it covers multiple years, so it's not every year. Does that report include data on collisions, fatal or very serious collisions related to right turn on red issues? Is that like explicitly tracked in that report?
Sorry. Through you, Chair. All of the contributing factors to all of the fatal collisions that are reviewed by the committee are included in the report. So if it's a right turn collision, if it happened on right turn on red, all of that information is included in the report. It doesn't include information about serious injury collisions because that is not part of the mandate of the committee.
Okay. Europe, Australia, banning right turns on red is kind of the norm. North America is different, although a lot of cities do have bans. New York City is probably the biggest one, or is the biggest one. Washington, D.C., Cambridge, Massachusetts, Ann Arbor, Michigan, Seattle are all more recent. How does staff track what other jurisdictions are doing? How other jurisdictions might be collecting before and after data? Do you track that? How do you track it? How do you use that to inform our approach here?
Through you, Chair. Typically, staff use the Federal Highway Administration's collision modification factor clearinghouse. That's a compilation of all of the studies done from a safety perspective, and it categorizes them for pedestrians, cyclists, intersections, rural roads, various things. But it evaluates the published research on different types of interventions that have been implemented and studies of their effectiveness. So it gives you a rating for each of the different types of collision modification factors to address different things, so we can determine which ones are the most effective to use for certain types of collisions when we do an evaluation and implement.
Okay, so that's a ongoing project to monitor and
yes,
yeah.
Yes.
Because I think some of those jurisdictions will give us I hope some of them are, I hope all of them are doing before and afters where they've done recent implementations. Because there is still, I think, a lot of uncertainty around the data. There's some compelling cases that right turn on red is a very effective intervention. There are others that are not as clear. So I hope Ottawa is not the last to implement something like this, but at least there's some other jurisdictions who are taking the lead going forward. I had a near miss on a right turn on red just last Wednesday at Elgin and Nepean, and there's no restriction there. I had one in Stittsville last fall, and then soon after, not because of my incident, but advanced green or a leading pedestrian signal, whatever that's called, was implemented. We have another intersection that was recently upgraded to a protected intersection. It's very, very effective at prioritizing pedestrian safety. So I just wanted to, there are multiple ways to achieve better pedestrian safety. There were a few delegations and even councillors who've brought up prioritizing downtown over the suburbs. And I would not agree that the suburbs are any safer for pedestrians than downtown. In fact, having fewer pedestrians around is maybe less of a habit for drivers to look out for pedestrians, as awful as that is. So I hope that any approach we're taking applies to the suburbs as much as it does to downtown. And I hope as like what I want to see, we have this policy in our transportation master plan. Councillor Devine referenced it. Some of the delegations did about continually improving pedestrian crossings. And I hope that we see some tracking. So we've got these numbers in the staff report about the number of right turn on red restrictions. I'd love to see on a year-to-year basis a tracking of how we're doing. How many protected intersections have we installed? How many right turn on red restrictions? How many leading pedestrian signals alongside any of the collision? And ideally, we've got a plan so that in the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, every intersection is covered and that we're seeing constant progress towards that. And then as far as a blanket ban or pilot or whatever, I think, we should be paying heed to the ward counselors. And they know their communities best. They know their situations. There's no motion though today on the table. So because we need some more discussion, we need some more socialization of the idea. What would the boundaries be? How would signage work? Nobody came today ready to move a motion or anything. So I think we spent a lot of time on the procedure stuff without any reason whatsoever. So I'm glad that motion was withdrawn. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, on that, I don't know where Kits is. We're officially going to withdraw it, but yes, it's withdrawn. And again, this will help end all this time that we spent on this. Councillor Truster.
Thank you so much, Chair, and I'm glad that you have withdrawn the motion simply because I heard you say the words, this issue is over. As you can hear from the people who came from the community, it's not over for people. I think it's worthwhile to have a conversation about what measures could be implemented citywide and also hyperlocally. And the conditions in downtown Ottawa are fundamentally different than other parts of the city. It doesn't mean that pedestrians are necessarily safe in the suburbs, but the number of people, the level of density, the number of buses, you heard from all the people who came to committee today. And my entire goal in putting an inquiry together was to get data and to open up this conversation. And what we heard, this is a question to staff from a lot of people who came today, is that they found the discrepancy between the CAA data and what the statistics that the city staff cited in the report to be problematic, specifically the lack of inclusion of near misses, and also potentially the definition of what is considered a serious accident. So first, I was wondering if you could just let me know, in this 20% you say of accidents that are related to right turn on red, is that only serious accidents that involve hospitalization? What's the definition there?
Thank you, through you, Chair. This only includes fatal and major injury collisions. So a fatality is defined as someone who passes away within 30 days of the collision due to injuries sustained in that collision. A major injury would be an individual who's transported to the hospital after a collision.
Okay, so that could be something like a broken arm if they were.
Yes.
Okay. Would that include a concussion that somebody's not necessarily hospitalized for?
If they're transported, yeah.
Only if they're transported.
Yeah,
Okay, because
yeah.
they'll say a concussion, somebody might not go to hospital and it could affect them cognitively for months or years of their life, right? And you heard about the child who ended up bruised up. The injury was not considered fatal or to be a major injury, but that's impacted the way that child travels through their community for the rest of their lives. I understand some of the conclusions you came to in the response, but I think there's a lot missing there. I think we're not seeing data, and it is certainly hard to quantify about the short and long-term impact on commuter patterns and on mobility, specifically urban mobility, when there are a series of near misses, when children and seniors are frightened to walk in their neighborhood. And as I mentioned before, this became very real to me when I had a baby that I was suddenly pushing into traffic. Another question I have for you is, if I'm not mistaken, the goal of the Road Safety Action Plan was to reduce serious accidents and deaths by road violence by, was it 20% per year?
20% over the 5 years.
20%
with
over
a goal of 0 fatalities by 2035.
Okay. Now, if I'm reading your response correctly, you said that only 20% of cyclists reported in collisions have been injured in right turn on red incidents. So I'm having trouble squaring those two numbers away. If the goal is a 20% reduction, and we're saying that 20% of collisions with cyclists are happening with right turn on red, why does that not elevate this issue in your eyes as a potential solution?
Thank you, through you, Chair. None of the cyclists collisions involved right turn on red. They involved right turning vehicles.
Right turning vehicles.
So the right turn, if they're going through right turn, on a green getting hit. Okay, that's the right turn, right? There's the two different conflict points in a right turn, this and here, right? The right turn on red addresses this one, it does not address this one. So if you've got a heavy cyclist movement going through down a corridor, the right turn on red's not going to mitigate that collision type.
Okay. Now, you do said in the report, and this is something that delegates were critical of, this idea that if someone driving can't turn right, they then may become more aggressive. Do we use that rationale for any other rule on the road, that somebody might not follow the rules, so therefore we shouldn't have the rule? I'm having difficulty understanding that rationale.
For you, Chair, it's not a big decision factor. It is a consequence of it, and just noted as a consequence of right turn on reds. You know, I sit at the right turn on red at Brewer Way and Bronson, and no right turn on red, I'm getting honked at a lot by people behind me wanting me to go because of the right turn on red restriction. So that's a bit of an aggressive behavior. Those things happen, it's noted, but it's not a huge decision factor when we determine whether or not we're implementing right turn on red. We really tried to look at how the intersection's being used, the different road users there, and what's in the best interest of everybody. So if you have a heavy cyclistic pedestrian movement in this direction and a low pedestrian movement in this direction, by concentrating all the right turns when these folks are going, reduces their safety, right? But increases the safety on this crosswalk. But if the pedestrian volume is low here, then we've increased the risk for these folks.
So what if an
advanced balance?
What if an advanced green is implemented, or a pedestrian advance is implemented at the same time as the right on red?
Yeah, that helps for
Does
sure,
that
because
eliminate the conflict?
It doesn't eliminate the conflict. It helps reduce the conflict. The only way to fully eliminate the conflict is to have everybody do what they're supposed to do at all times, and separate everybody in either time or space. So giving everybody a dedicated movement and separating, and then everybody following the rules.
Right. Although I would argue that the frustration of the person who's honking behind you is because it's a surprise to them that there's no red on red at that intersection. If it was consistent in a particular zone, driver patterns could adapt. Possibly?
Potentially.
Yeah. Okay. How many, if the goal is to reduce major fatalities by 20% per year, how many people does that represent? Do we know, based on the data?
It's reducing fatal and major injury collisions. I don't have the number off the top of my head, but I think the average, what was it? We had 749 in the original road safety action plan, so 20% of 749, 140 something over a 5-year period.
Yeah, it's unfortunately, that's the data that's contained in a road safety action plan. So yeah, and I think just to expand on a couple of points, the point that you raise, I think, is a very valid point, that these types of discussions, right now we're responding to the inquiry. I think the fullness of the discussion very much is as part of the road safety action plan, because as Councillor Gower indicated, there's a lot of things that we're also trying to balance. So it's basically, how do we make sure that we're allocating the resources that we have towards the greatest priorities of council? So I think that is the fullness of the discussion where it should be taking place. I think what we've tried to do is, in trying to keep the responses succinct to the questions that were raised, is also provide additional context to some of the data that was provided. And my only concern is that basically I think we're taking the numbers and we're just running with the numbers without necessarily reading the paragraphs below that's giving context around the numbers. Because when you peel the onion in terms of reading through all of the details, what it shows is basically I think there's one collision that was due to a red turn on red restriction. So even though we're talking about basically 12 cyclists and 5 pedestrians, those are involved a right turn movement, does not mean that that right turn movement was at a restricted intersection. That's why we provided the additional context below. So in fact, when you look at the data, the more significant concern is actually the left turns movement. That is a far greater concern right now in terms of collision. So I think what we're trying to do is basically use the data we have, provide the proper context to that data, and then how do we make sure that we put strategies in place that will make our intersections a lot safer. And I want to come back again to the CAA report. The CAA report is very much aligned to the approach that the city is taking. The CAA report, yes, I think the big value of that report is basically it provides more data in terms of near misses. Again, it's at a limited number in the intersection. It provides a good source of data and information, but even the conclusions from that report doesn't draw the conclusion to say, well, we should be banning red turns on right everywhere. Where it focuses basically is the approach that the city is taking. Where is it appropriate to have those turns restrictions? How do we implement lead times for pedestrians that you were mentioning to be able to increase the visibility? And when we're designing our intersections, how do we try to make them as, from an engineering perspective, as safe as we can? That very much is aligned also with the city's approach.
Okay, so you mentioned a case-by-case basis. But as one of the delegates mentioned coming here, there's very few intersections that are not extremely busy with a high volume of pedestrians in Centertown. Why wouldn't a pilot area be contemplatable from your perspective? It seems to be in the report, a specific zone where there's one rule that everybody can follow. Because I'm hearing a lot, and I experience it, that the problem with the intersection to intersection approach, specifically in the busiest part of the city, is that inconsistency is leading to aggression and to people not knowing what they're supposed to be doing.
I guess the only way I can answer that question is to go back to the data. If the data told us basically different stats, we would be taking different actions. So to say, could we do a pilot? Yeah, we can do whatever council directs us to look at. We're just not, we're not recommending it at this point to say, like, the data really doesn't support that in terms of how would it make those areas safer. And again, it's not just the streets, it's basically how do you define those zones? We're not the island of Montreal where you can say, okay, well, once you're in this area, everything is treated similarly. The city's not configured the same way. So, but it does not shift the focus around trying to make sure that we use as much as the data that we have to try to apply the right decisions. And again, we're not saying that we're not applying red turn on right. We are. It's just we want to make sure that basically we're applying in areas where we're able to demonstrate that, yes, there's a safety benefit. And when you look at the data that we've provided with the additional context, I think it points to there's other areas that we need to be focusing on to increase the safety of vulnerable users. And that's why this is a broader discussion for the road safety action plan.
Thank you.
Councillor Devine.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you again, staff, for answering all of our questions. And to echo what some of my colleagues have already said, I also am looking forward to our opportunity for the Road Safety Action Plan review. I think there's a lot of issues and questions that we want to explore there, and that is the best opportunity for it. I completely get that. One thing that I keep on wanting to come back to, and I think staff will agree, that when it comes to effective road safety measures, effective safety mechanisms to address conflict between vehicles and vulnerable road users, would staff agree that predictability and consistency are good tools to have in place for effective safety measures?
Through you, Chair, yes, consistency is very important for road safety.
And to that degree, I do look forward to any kind of conversation that looks at a strategic lens of how to get predictability from, let's say, right turn on red. And I'm not advocating for any one thing, but we know why it's easy to implement in Montreal because it's so predictable. Cross the bridge, vous êtes dans Montréal, no right turn on red. It's easy to get. And I understand your concern that a downtown ban could be hard to demarcate. And I'm not proposing anything here, but I know that school safety zones are predictable because we all understand you're in a school zone, change your behavior. And so theoretically, a pilot that explores right turn on red exclusively in school zones could achieve predictability and consistency. And the irony here is that going back to what I heard from the delegate earlier, same thing in my ward. I can't tell you how many parents I hear who live within 3 blocks of a school, but they will not let their kid walk to that school because they don't feel safe. And what happens then is, because they don't feel safe, because we don't have any kind of consistency around schools, they drive, which increases congestion. And so it increases the problem that to a certain degree you're trying to address. How do we solve congestion? And in one way, we address congestion not necessarily by freeing up road capacity. We address congestion by making people less reliant on cars. And one way to do that is to make them feel confident that little Billy can walk to school for 3 blocks and the parent's not going to worry and freak out. So I look forward to those conversations. Getting back to policy 6.4, because what I want to understand here is, I think when I ran out of time before, you were saying that, like in the staff report, where it says that something about operational impacts, that you address each intersection on a case-by-case basis, factoring in many issues, including operational impacts. And I think I understood you say that one action of the road safety action plan was to direct you to come up with criteria. Is that kind of what you said before?
That's correct. It was a deliverable of one of the action plans.
Did it provide direction on what might be the criteria? And was operational impacts explicitly referred to in any instruction that the road safety action plan provided you with?
There wasn't any specific instruction on how to develop it. We used our professional judgment.
Okay, thank you. And I have no problem with the issue that departments will have different needs to address, competing priorities. Traffic safety versus traffic flow versus safety. In the road safety, in the policy document, the strategic road safety action plan calls for implementing no right turn on red restrictions to address various safety concerns, including, and it lists them all. Nowhere is operational impacts mentioned at all. And so I have a question for transportation planning staff, if I may. Were transportation planning involved in writing the response to the inquiry? I suspect not.
So no, we were not involved in responding.
And can I just get, and again, different competing priorities, department, can I get transportation planning staff's input or take on, if the road safety action plan, if policy 6.4, which ironically is called make it easier to cross the street, and I presume it meant make it easier to cross the street for pedestrians and cyclists, I presume. But if the goal of that policy is to include many measures, including right turn on red restrictions, and if staff went off and developed criteria that include operational impacts, i.e. traffic flow, is that is that criteria for consideration over traffic flow? Is that aligned with what transportation planning intended with that policy?
So the Transportation Master Plan is a supporting document of the official plan, and the Road Safety Action Plan is a supporting document of the Transportation Master Plan. So the TMP sort of sets the policy framework in terms of improving pedestrian safety, encouraging modal shift towards active modes in transit, and it includes some language around the situations where we would want to consider right turn on red from a safety perspective, but the details on how to implement that would really be worked out through the road safety action plan. And so, certainly it's one of the measures in the toolbox, and the transportation master plan sort of spoke to the importance of that. But we've already heard discussion around some of the other measures in the toolbox, such as the leading pedestrian intervals and so on, that would also be important for addressing this policy to make it safer to cross the street for pedestrians and cyclists.
Thank you. Just to wrap that up then, if they're meant to be directed by the road safety action plan, is considerations over operational impacts, i.e. traffic, is that a lens through which the road safety action plan, in terms of its safety initiatives, is meant to be observed through?
Thank you.
I mean, in terms of developing the policies and the road safety act, or the criteria in the road safety action plan, I mean, I think that's more sort of on the road safety action plan team, but certainly from a transportation planning perspective, you know, we certainly look at all of the different considerations at an intersection, for example. So safety is certainly part of that. But, you know, you're also considering unintended consequences that you may have from impacting traffic flow, for example. So it is, you know, you want to make sure that what you're implementing from a traffic safety perspective and a traffic flow perspective are aligned, so that you're not creating problems that you're not expecting or intending to create.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
And just I can also add to Jennifer's point is, I would not want community to be left with the impression that there's a disconnect between what we do from a traffic perspective to what our colleagues do from a transportation planning perspective. So they will look at, we work together, they look at it from a macro level perspective, we look at it from a micro level perspective. So there is very much alignment between the work that we do. And yes, some of the policy decisions that are identified through our policy documents, we will take it one step deeper around, okay, how do we implement that in the field? So that's why there's very much an alignment between the work that we're doing and that connection that you see also through our policy documents between the road safety action plan, the transportation master plan, and ultimately the OP.
Councillor Troster.
Thank you so much. So I made this inquiry in response to a series of collisions, one of which I observed this summer that was incredibly upsetting. And after attending the memorial ceremony for a woman named Saloni, who was killed by a truck driver in front of City Hall this summer. And I don't need to tell you what it's like to look in the eyes of the loved one of someone who's been killed in an act of road violence. It's horrific. This woman was a newcomer to Ottawa. Her mother was a single mom in India that Saloni was supporting. The mother was reportedly hospitalized from shock when she found out her daughter had been killed. And all of her co-workers who work in the building right beside City Hall came to this memorial completely shell-shocked and devastated. Whether this is the solution that we're looking for or not, we are not meeting our obligations when it comes to road safety. And I am seriously concerned if it's changing lifetime mobility patterns for people in our neighborhood. My daughter is almost 14. She should be able to get around herself, but she doesn't feel safe doing so now, and she probably isn't safe doing so right now. So I just really want to question some comments that the chair of this committee made earlier, and also suggesting that this is wasting people's time with this noise. This is not noise, this is people's lives. You heard from a young woman who lost her sister to road violence. And so asking for information, proposing solutions, thinking outside the box, and challenging the city to live up to its obligations, these are not numbers, these are human beings. And so I don't think it's ever a waste of time to have this conversation. So I want to thank staff for the response. There are some elements in your response I fundamentally believe is based on flawed premises. I think not accounting for near misses and the potential for near misses in changing people's behavior. And as I said before, you have the right to be safe, and you also have the right to feel safe on our roads. So that was my entire goal with submitting this inquiry, was to have the conversation that we had today. I want to thank all of the residents who came to participate. This is about people. This is about people moving around safely in our communities. And I would hope you would all agree with me that it's certainly not a waste of time. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you for that. Seeing no further, I did want to take the opportunity to thank staff. Before I do that, though, Vice Chair, I've asked, you're fine to withdraw the vote?
The motion is withdrawn.
Great. Thank you. And sorry to force this on people as a procedure. I guess they weren't aware of the procedures. It's really good to know. It actually forces the opportunity to get on the table what we've learned here today. Of course, if we had the opportunity, we would say, this was a panacea, we'd say, absolutely, let's get rid of right turns on red. No problem. We also learned today the RSAP. When we get into that, that's the venue for these discussions. We're going to continue these discussions. And people, if they wish to, look at banning right turns on red. And to the counselor that makes mention, it's not just a downtown issue, it's everywhere, every intersection. But do we want to go ahead and put the clamps on every right turn? I see you, Florence, nodding yes, but unfortunately, it also in the report is very detailed that it actually creates a greater risk for pedestrians that are queuing, creating GHGs by idling. That was confirmed by Ecology Ottawa. By the Council on Aging, I just actually got a response. No, they want to proactively work with the city on targeted intersections. They actually don't. They haven't had a vote. They haven't discussed a targeted ban on right turns on red. We've also heard some other misinformation that is out there, and I think it's worth clarifying. Some people thought that Montreal, it's there still. Quebec got rid of it because it was a gas crisis. Well, I'm a 73, 74 kid, and that's when the gas crisis happened. The reason why they made changes to the act, and the group out of Quebec is called SAAQ, they made the determination that they wanted to harmonize with the rest of the entire country. Had nothing to do with gas savings. It had everything to do with wanting to normalize with the rest of the country. Now, for those that say, well, that made a big difference. Well, the stats are that they actually do, the SAAQ does stats. They did 3 years prior to 2003 when they implemented the ban on right turns. When it was in place in Quebec, there was sadly between 20 and 2002, 91 pedestrian deaths. The following year, between 2002 and 2004, there was 90. There is no definitive proof that there's a correlation. What they do, and what Vision Zero National says, they're about protecting pedestrian signalized phases. We do that in the city. We do it exceptionally well. We give lead time to pedestrians. That's where our focus should be. We've also gone through the fact that you look at right turns, it's the left turns that are the greater issue. We've seen today many people come forward where people are simply breaking the law and not stopping. And I think with the police coming to the table, and we're going to see more community policing, we're cracking down on that. That's where our focus should be. Because you could have as many signs as you want, you can't force people to do anything unless you lay some kind of infraction or charge. Now, we'll continue to work ahead, and I appreciate this is a very sensitive subject for people. Some people have gotten very personal about it. I wish to take that out of this. I think we've had a great discussion today. The discussion will continue. It will not end. When it comes to, this is flashbacks to when we also had a great debate about the Idaho stop last term. Does anyone remember that? Where a lot of people wanted to be able to bicycle through red lights. The public had outcry. They were very frustrated where you create two separate, very confusing set of rules for people. And unfortunately, we had to go through the same procedure as this, where we put the stop to it. And we said, no, we're not discussing this. We've done the same here today. It's been confirmed by staff. If we want to ban right turns on red, live and die by the sword. Put a motion forward. I have no problem with that. But it will be up to the public to be able to give us the feedback in an appropriate venue and an appropriate time. I know this is not the results that some people wanted to hear, and they wanted to twist the narrative that our professional city staff have provided us. They really have. They've done a tremendous job. Do you think any staff member wants to put people in danger? Clearly not. So on that, we do have a report, and it's in front of us today. I've checked. I'm going to ask to receive it, but if you don't believe in it, you can also say you don't wish to receive it, and you can vote on it. So I leave it up to you. I'm looking definitively. Is this received?
Just had.
So in that case, I'm looking at you, Robbie. Does that require a recorded vote at this point?
No, Chair, but the one dissent will be noted.
Thank you very much. Most appreciated. Okay, so on that, I will proceed ahead. Oh, yes, on to more fun stuff. We're on to the Paint It Up program results. And it's just simply in the agenda. So we'll move along to the next item in the agenda. We have Councillor Lowe with the watershed shield parking.
Thank you, Chair. I do want to note that there is a replacement version of the motion. It just changes one of the points in the operative clause. If it's on the screen there, I'll read it in. Therefore be resolved, the Public Works and Infrastructure Committee recommends council direct staff to implement a year-round full-time parking prohibition on the same side as the existing winter parking prohibition, replacing the winter parking prohibition on the following streets before the 1st of April 2026. Sicily, Colroot, Gentian, Spring Beauty, Sweet Flag, Twayblade, and Water Shield. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
All right, so we have this on the floor. Is there any questions of the councillor? Councillor Troster.
Thanks again. So I know we looked at this at previous committee. So the only time this parking ban is happening though is when the mosque has its busy ceremonies on Fridays?
The current version of the motion?
Yeah.
No, the current version of the motion would take away parking on the same side as the existing winter parking ban at all times.
At all times.
At all times.
Okay.
So
Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, no, it's appreciated because he did work with it. He did hear the concerns of this committee. Is there any further questions on this item? Seeing none, is this item carried? Thank you.
I'm going to dissent as well. Yeah.
And okay, and so the two dissents are noted. Thank you. So I believe, do we have anything more on the agenda? Oh, maybe I'll get to Vice Chair Kitts to take this for a second because I have the bladder of a squirrel. If you could take over this component for 2 seconds.
Sure. We have a notice of motion from Councillor Troster on behalf of Councillor Kavanaugh.
Thank you very much. This is on behalf of Councillor Kavanaugh. Whereas road murals provide significant community benefits by capturing drivers' attention, they can help calm traffic and improve pedestrian safety, creating streets that feel more welcoming and secure. And whereas beyond safety, these murals celebrate local culture and history, featuring a sense of fostering a sense of identity and pride among residents. And whereas road murals also make neighborhoods more visually appealing and distinctive, attracting visitors and supporting tourism, reflect local culture and history, strengthening community connections and make neighborhoods more inviting and distinctive. And whereas there are currently no clear directives from the City of Ottawa to communities on how to safely implement road murals, and that residents have been requesting clear guidance to begin projects for some time, therefore be it resolved that staff develop regulations regarding murals on city roads, including which streets are permitted to have on-street murals, for example, residential versus arterial, local considerations such as minimum distance from curbs and intersections, aesthetic safety issues to ensure that they do not obstruct or mimic traffic signs or devices, accepted paint types which are skid resistant, non-reflected and durable regulations around the maintenance and removal of degrading murals, funding for accepted projects be integrated under the ward temporary traffic calming budget, right-of-way and road closure considerations during the painting process, and be it further resolved that staff work toward developing clear information for residents interested in creating a road mural, such as a how-to guide, a permit application method for residents that is clear, accessible, and online, and be it further resolved that these regulations be completed by the end of Q2 2026. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Troster. So we'll deal with that at the next meeting. The next one is moved by myself, and we're asking that the rules of procedure be waived because it is of a time-sensitive nature. So is that carried? Thank you. So whereas on April 12th, 2023, City Council approved the recommendations from the report right-of-way patio bylaw update and new urban design guidelines for commercial patios. And whereas Council granted the manager right-of-way heritage and urban design in consultation with the Director of Traffic Services, together with the Director of Roads and Parking Services, the delegated authority for seasonal road closures for an additional period of 3 years through March 2026. And whereas an extension to the delegated authority is required to allow for the approval of seasonal road closure requests for the purposes of placemaking and economic activity on our city's local streets, particularly in the downtown and Byward Market. And whereas staff intend to recommend this change permanently as part of the delegation of authority bylaw review in the next term of council, therefore be it resolved that Public Works and Infrastructure Committee recommend council approve the extension of delegated authority to the Director Right of Way, Heritage and Urban Design in consultation with the Director of Traffic Services, together with the Director of Roads and Parking Services for seasonal road closures to December 2027.
Madam Chair, because you're in the chair, point of order, because you're in the chair, I'll suggest that I'll move that motion on your behalf.
Sure. Are there any questions? Okay, great. Carried. Great. Are there any inquiries? Seeing none, there's no other business, so we are adjourned. The next meeting is Monday, March 30th. Thank you.